The story begins in the area of a military camp. Inside a tent, the silhouette of someone could be seen sitting and polishing a sword, accompanied by a narration. This sword is proof of my loyalty, and the master of that loyalty is none other than the one I swore my allegiance to, Lord Atlas. The sword was raised high as the train of thought continued. My entire existence is defined by this single sword. Zeno's face betrayed no emotion whatsoever. From outside, someone lifted the tent flap and stepped in, calling out, "Zeno." He stood up immediately, his dark hair fluttering in the breeze. Zeno knelt before Atlas. From this side, the latter spoke in a stern tone, declaring, "We march at dawn." The order continued. "You will take the vanguard and smash straight through the center of the enemy formation. Bring me the head of the enemy, General Garzus, for the glory of the Arclight House," accompanied by a warning, "Do not disappoint me." Zeno wore no expression, but he was reminiscing about the past. On that snowy day, Lord Atlas took me in. When the two of them first met, Zeno was on the brink of death and was given a reason to live. His eyes at that time were completely lifeless. Even so, Zeno understood one thing. This life belonged to Lord Atlas. At present, he had his eyes closed. When his eyes opened once again, Zeno promptly replied, "As you command." Hearing this, Atlas was temporarily satisfied and left the tent. Left all alone, Zeno tightened his grip on the sword hilt. The battlefield was fiercely brutal to him. Yet, Zeno slaughtered everything in his path. The enemy even used horses to charge. But Zeno's face showed not a hint of fear. He stood facing them head-on. At this moment, Zeno thought to himself. The vanguard troops, on their faces, wore an utterly scornful smile. "Everything I have built for the Arclight House." Zeno's legs gave out, while he coughed up blood continuously. His vision grew increasingly blurred. "A loyal blade forged by engraving it deep into my soul." Yet his mind was crystal clear, condensing everything into a single point. A name was uttered, Peerless Phantom. The shadows of horses appeared with Zeno right beneath them. As he swept past, they were all cut down. The other soldiers on the battlefield took notice. "There it is, that monster's swordsmanship. That is not a sword technique belonging to our Arclight House." But the very next second, Zeno suddenly vomited fresh blood. He collapsed, only to receive pure contempt from those around him. "Stay back. You'll get stained by that filth." Zeno's eyes widened. His whole body jerked upright upon hearing the noise. Ahead of him was another batch of soldiers. The second wave. Zeno clenched his teeth, thinking to himself, "This is bad." His hand gripping the sword tightened further. "I can only pull off at most one more Peerless Phantom." Just then, Zeno turned his head backward. Where he was looking up toward was high above. Up there, Alice was watching as well. Zeno easily recognized the command from his mere nod. His lips pressed tightly together. Zeno had no choice but to keep moving forward. "As you command." Zeno's body could barely stand anymore, even if this life had to be sacrificed. Behind him, Alice looked on. Zeno used every ounce of his strength to break through the encirclement. It was all for Lord Atlas. At this moment, the latter was thinking to himself, "Just as I thought." Atlas's eyes were glued to Zeno. That obnoxious golden light was starting to leak out. Then he raised his hand to signal the rest. "Time's up. If it goes beyond this point, he won't be a tool anymore." Along with that, Atlas pulled out a black piece of paper. "Do it. Un malvol aura instantly matérialisé." A piercing screech echoed through the air. Zeno was struck down with undisguised confusion. "This is the dark sealing array." "What?" he repeatedly asked himself while looking back. A strange mark had appeared on Zeno's neck. It ravaged his body and caused Zeno to vomit blood. Everything was getting much harder. An enemy soldier raised the weapon in his hand. "Too bad for you," he yelled right into Zeno's face. "You monster!" Not a single person stepped in to help, and he just like that lost one of his arms. The opponent gloated maliciously. "I'm merely fulfilling a promise to your master. If you want to hold a grudge against someone, blame him." This time Zeno was utterly dumbfounded. Lord Atlas did this? What is supposed to mean? Footsteps could be heard approaching. It didn't take long for Zeno to realize. Atlas's tall figure appeared before him. He spoke unhurriedly. "Zeno." Zeno's eyes caught Atlas's expression, while the man himself coldly declared, "Your role ends here." Zeno gritted his teeth in frustration and demanded, "Why, Lord Atlas?" His hand clenched tightly as he tried to call out, "No. Father. Little did he expect his words to be refuted. Don't misunderstand, orphan. Atlas coldly added one more line. I have never once thought of you as my son. The harsh reality finally laid bare before Zeno. Even if just for a second, Atlas continued to elaborate. On that snowy day, I looked into your empty eyes. He recalled Zeno's despair at the time and frankly shared his thoughts. This guy will make a good tool. All Atlas did was give him a reason to live, and he would be loyal like a dog, and you would become a convenient sword. His expression shifted slightly as he went on. But for a tool, you were crafted a bit too perfectly. Atlas remembered what happened in the past. That abnormal spiritual energy from childhood, along with his own efforts. I did everything within my power. He constantly sought ways to hold it back, to suppress it until now. But it seems I've reached my limit. Atlas continued in an even tone. That light just now is the clearest proof of your overflowing energy. He took a few steps and added, I decided that it was only a matter of time before you bared your fangs at us. Hearing this, Zeno honestly shared that I would never even think of betraying Father. Never. His voice was heavy with despair. Atlas decisively severed Zeno's remaining arm. His subordinates replied with utter coldness. You're too noisy. Atlas chimed in as well. Zeno, I will tell you one last thing. The meaning of that name in our family. He looked down at him with a gaze one would give an insect. It means a disposable sword. At this point, the subordinates all burst into laughter. Meanwhile, Zeno was struggling to move. He used even his face to drag himself forward. Once close enough, Zeno spoke up. This life, Atlas coldly watched and listened. And this sword as well. I have offered all of them exclusively to you. Suddenly the sword was picked up. The soldier and Atlas himself were both astonished. Zeno actually used his mouth to bite down on the sword. Light was gradually emitting from his eyes as he cast the technique. But before he could finish a few words, Zeno collapsed. He fell flat onto the ground and lay motionless. Only then did the rest of them crack a smug smile. Scared the hell out of me. They continuously mocked Zeno. Stupid monster. Meanwhile, deep inside, he thought to himself, the very first reason to live I was ever granted was merely to become nothing more than a tool. Meanwhile, the others were eager to take his life. Just die already. Zeno bitterly realized he had been used and discarded. His body was gradually giving out. What on earth have I been doing all this time? A piece of music played alongside sincere emotions. So warm. Am I in the afterlife? Looking up, Zeno spotted a family crest flag. It belonged to the Elminster house, the strongest wizard family on the continent, and a hand appeared before him. Are you awake, dear? Celestia, with a bright smile on her lips. My precious, lovely baby. This title left Zeno, now Lucius, thoroughly confused. Baby. He glanced down and caught sight of his own tiny hands. Lucius wore a look of astonishment and repeatedly asked himself, what is going on here? Speaking of the divided empire, the Arclight House, which regarded swordsmanship as supreme, and the Elminster House, which considered magic as ultimate power. Alongside that, it was said that the founder of the Elminster House created an entire continent with a single spell, and possessed spiritual energy rivaling the sun. At this moment, a groggy Lucius thought to himself, how ironic. To think someone who dedicated his entire life to the sword would be reincarnated into a completely opposite family. He closed his eyes and sensed something unusual within his body. It instantly forced Lucius to open his eyes. His expression grew tense as he muttered to himself, this feeling, that is what they call spiritual energy. This endless, surging torrent. Lucius frowned, thinking to himself, it's the true power beyond imagination that was stolen from me in my past life. The corners of his lips curved into an amused smile. Looks like the heavens haven't abandoned me yet. He began to list a flawless environment, the greatest bloodline, and infinite spiritual energy. I will use everything I have. A goal was also established to carry out his revenge against Atlas. Lucius smiled wickedly, calculating carefully. But to do that, I first need to take absolute control of this family's entire power. However, what appeared before Lucius were actually two children's toys. All the servants gathered before Lucius. They were all overjoyed as they treated him. We prepared this specially for you. young Master Lucius. A thorough explanation was given. This is a special baby food made from sap harvested directly from the world tree. The chef slowly brought the straw closer, now open wide. But before Lucius could get a taste, another servant cut in. No, young Master Lucius, look at this sparkly rattle. All the maids stayed up all night, infusing our spiritual energy into it. The light radiating from that item was so blinding that the other maids looked upon it with reverence. Both sides clashed in extreme tension. Right then, a gentle hand touched Lucius. Celestia hugged her son and reminded them, "Quiet down, everyone. You're going to overwhelm little Lucius." Her voice was extremely tender. "Isn't that right, Lucius?" While her hand kept patting Lucius's head. His gaze grew complicated as he instinctively reminded himself, "Don't misunderstand. The painful memories of my past life resurfaced. An orphan like me." And Lucius firmly believed that all the affection they were showing him was simply because of his latent magical talent. He felt a pang of heartache as he recalled the past. "I know all too well not to harbor foolish hopes for such things." However, Celestia and the servants were overjoyed witnessing Lucius's growth. Young Master rolled over. Young Master did it. My lady. Meanwhile, he muttered to himself, "I will simply use this environment to serve my revenge." Night quickly descended upon the castle. A week had passed since my reincarnation. Right now, Lucius was sitting on the bed, drinking milk. And in just these few short days, I had realized something. Yet his expression was intensely strained. The magical prowess and educational methods of the Elminster house far exceed my wildest imagination. Lucius recalled what he had received. Even a single bottle of milk contained a massive amount of spiritual energy. He spent most of his time beside his mother, and an observation came to mind. The rules of spellcasting were naturally woven into their soothing lullabies. Lucius was constantly surrounded by highly experienced servants. He set the bottle aside and thought to himself, "I'm still not used to acting like an infant." But then Lucius raised one hand and calculated, "Perhaps it's time to test my current strength." He closed his eyes to begin sensing the true essence of the illusion he had mastered in his past life, based on condensing all his power into a single point. He said to himself, "Just like what I did with my sword back then." The streams of energy continuously shifted. "I will perfectly control every bit of my current spiritual energy." A burst of light appeared, leaving Lucius astonished. That light gradually grew blindingly bright and spiraled out of control, piercing right through the mansion. The servants were all startled in unison. Both Celestia and Fran wore looks of sheer shock. That light was so dazzling it dyed the entire sky blue. Meanwhile, Lucius had already collapsed tiredly onto the bed. "I never expected my spiritual energy to fluctuate this much in just 1 week." Even he himself couldn't believe it. "This is unbelievable." But following that outburst of power, Lucius quickly drifted off to sleep. "As long as I can manage to completely control this thing." On this side, Celestia was rushing anxiously toward his room. She flung the door wide open with a loud call. "Lucius!" There was clearly a loud noise just now, but the only thing greeting Celestia was silence. Celestia slowly stepped closer and gazed tenderly at her son. "He's sleeping so soundly." Fran wrapped a cloak around her and asked, "So is it just our imagination after all?" Celestia muttered while watching Lucius. "I wonder what he's dreaming about." Time flew by quickly. On one fine day, Fran shoved the door open and blurted out anxiously, "My lady." Her face could not conceal her worry. "Bad news, the royal family." But before Fran could finish, Celestia cut her off. "Calm down, Fran. What is it?" Despite her advice, the other's voice remained utterly rushed. "A delegation escorted by the royal guards has just arrived at the mansion gates. It's an inspector serving directly under the royal family." Lucius, sitting in Celestia's lap, also grew alert upon hearing those words. "An inspector?" At this point, she muttered in bewilderment. Why would they come to such a remote territory without any prior notice? And right when the head of the house is away. Lucius listened very carefully and assessed to himself. "So that's how it is. They must have detected my spiritual energy outburst last night. This is getting complicated." Very quickly, a group of people had gathered. Sitting on the chairs were none other than Celestia and Lucius. The massive doors were pushed open. She politely stood up to greet them. The visitors slowly walked in from outside. Celestia's face betrayed no emotion. Valerius stopped before her and called out, "Lady Elminster." He quickly stated his business. "We can dispense with the pleasantries. I have come bearing an imperial decree." Valerius's gaze locked onto Celestia and Lucius. Last night, the Empire's spiritual energy monitoring network detected. The event was recounted in detail. An unprecedented torrent of spiritual energy erupting from this very territory. An anomaly on a scale perhaps seen once in a millennium. Then, he held out his open palm. The source of that spiritual energy is right here. The pointed target was none other than inside the Elminster family's mansion. The servants instantly broke into an uproar. "No way. Where could it have possibly come from?" Valerius added further. "If our inspection results determine this energy source to be a threat," he didn't forget to append a threat, "then according to imperial law, we will proceed to purge it." Everyone wore an anxious expression. "Impossible." Valerius brushed past Celestia while finishing his sentence. "That is our duty." An object was retrieved from his hand. As the inspector, Valerius slowly held it high. He moved the orb around the room with an absolute declaration. "The energy source is definitely somewhere right in this hall." Very quickly, the orb began to emit light. The ray of light pointed straight at Celestia. Valerius's voice lowered as he called out, "Lady Elminster." His eyes pierced into her as he requested, "Would you mind stepping over this way?" Celestia, though worried, had no choice but to comply. "I understand." A maid took Lucius from her arms with a call, "My lady." But Celestia gently reassured her, "It will be fine. Please keep an eye on Lucius for me." Valerius extended his hand forward. "Pardon my intrusion." The orb was aimed toward her. The glowing light revealed that it was not coming from the lady. His gaze couldn't hide his confusion. "Where on earth is it coming from then?" As if answering that question, the orb glowed once more. It moved faster and faster. The beam of light shot out with immense force, and the target was none other than Lucius. This sight left Valerius rooted to the spot. His expression was one of sheer astonishment, his eyes glued to Lucius. The light grew stronger by the second, to the point that the orb shattered into countless tiny pieces. Valerius panicked, his voice rising a few octaves. Could that energy source be? Not only him, but Celestia and the servants were equally shocked. Everyone cast incredulous looks at Lucius alone. This newborn baby? The room echoed with Valerius's cry of disbelief. "No way." He stared at Lucius and continued. "A magical artifact that even a first-tier mage couldn't destroy, shattered into pieces just from mental pressure alone." On the other side, he was also watching the opponent with an extremely guarded expression. Valerius continued while reaching his hand forward. "If that's the case, I will link my soul directly." His goal was to see through its true nature. Little did he expect the effort to trigger a backlash almost immediately. This was beyond Valerius's expectations. "What is this?" Meanwhile, Lucius remained completely fine. His soul, the more Valerius realized, the more astonished he became. The immense spiritual energy was so vast that he felt he couldn't even touch its core, feeling as though he were staring straight into the sun. Valerius's eyes widened, his expression exceedingly complex. Right then, he caught sight of something else unusual. "What on earth is that?" His dazed state was interrupted by Celestia's voice. "Chief Inspector, what did you see?" Valerius replied to her without haste. "The duty of the Empire's royal inspectors," his even voice echoed, "is to prevent the prophecy recorded in a single ancient tome. A book written at the dawn of this very empire." An example was cited. That book prophesied the greatest calamity the empire would ever face. And Valerius mentioned one thing. He who carries an abyss curse within a holy soul will ultimately summon a great disaster and plunge the empire into darkness. He detailed thoroughly. "What I just saw inside your son's soul matches that prophecy perfectly, without a single error." This time the one taken by surprise was Celestia. "Impossible." Valerius placed a hand on his chest as he went on. "The curse dwelling within his soul is the spark that will ravage the empire. In the name of the authority of the royal crown," he made a declaration. "Before it can flare up, I will extinguish it right here and right now. Hearing this, Celestia and the other servants changed their expressions. Even Lucius himself heightened his vigilance. His hand behind his back was preparing to weave magic. A sword was drawn, but before any clash could occur, Celestia spoke up. Please wait. Valerius and his men were startled into taking a step back. It turned out she was casting magic herself. I will not allow you to lay a finger on that child's hair. Seeing this, Valerius coldly asked back, Are you implying you wish to defy the laws of the Empire? Celestia simply replied with utmost politeness. A single tear shed by my child weighs far more than the laws of the Empire. Her stance was clearly expressed. That was the meaning of being a mother, and it successfully elicited a startled reaction from Lucius. Opposite them, Valerius was also ready for battle. Are you truly prepared to bear the consequences? He summoned his blue magic. Both sides were poised to clash right then and there. However, Valerius's hand, which had been radiating blue light the second before, suddenly calmed down. This scene left everyone present stunned. Questions began to arise. Chief Inspector, are you seriously planning to let them go? Valerius spoke in a subdued tone as he repeated those words. The law. He turned his head and headed toward the exit. The law commands me to root out the seed of calamity. But will a sapling nurtured in such deep affection truly bloom into a disaster? On this side, Celestia had not lowered her guard yet. He stopped in front of Lucius with a declaration. I've decided I want to witness it with my own eyes. Lucius was also observing him with extreme caution. Then Valerius turned back and called out, Lady Celestia. He acknowledged her previous resolve. You had the determination to turn your back on the entire empire for this child, and solemnly declared, If that's the case, I will share that burden with you as well. This outcome was unexpected to Celestia. As he turned to leave, Valerius didn't forget to add, However, should this child ever stray from the path, we will share the responsibility together. Do we have an agreement? Then he and his men departed from the place. But before the door closed completely, Valerius issued a parting warning, Don't forget it. Finally, he left completely. Right then, Celestia let out a sigh of relief. But the truth was her body was trembling. The next second, Celestia dashed forward. She rushed swiftly toward Lucius. Her trembling hands cradled Lucius's tiny face. Thank goodness. She kept repeating, I'm so glad, Lucius. Celestia couldn't help collapsing to the ground. I'm just glad you're safe. Thank goodness. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Celestia tightly hugged Lucius to her chest. This action made him think even more deeply. Elsewhere, Valerius's subordinate questioned, Are you certain about this? He simply replied with absolute decisiveness, Yes. Report this to His Majesty. Then he added with a smile, Tell him that we have found an extraordinary talent, one who will bring immense benefits to the nation in the near future. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 12 years later, right now, Lucius was standing alone and practicing magic. He spun around to deflect the rays of light flying toward him. The training grew harsher by the minute. More, Lucius closed his eyes to sense everything, pushing his mind to the absolute limit through extreme tension. His train of thought developed, getting closer and closer to the abyss of death. Graceful steps as he spun around several times. Opening his eyes once more, Lucius silently declared, The more your power is elevated. The training ended right there. Lucius's whole body collapsed with exhaustion. From below came Celestia's voice. Lucius, she continued anxiously, You're pushing yourself into that kind of reckless training again. Hearing this, Lucius slowly stood up. He stepped 1 foot forward. I'm fine, Mother. Then let his body fall freely to the ground. After all, I've been doing this every single day for the past 12 years. Celestia and Fran both looked on with worry. However, Lucius used magic to maneuver himself, then landed on the ground with absolute gentleness. Lucius did not forget to wear a satisfied smile. Fran angrily scolded aloud. What are you smirking about? The moment you let down your guard is when it's most dangerous. I almost died 3 times during my days as a magical knight because of that. Lucius couldn't be bothered to argue, already too used to this. I know. While the two of them were bickering, Celestia stood by, silently observing. 12 years already. Lucius's gaze shifted and became much more serious the next second. Friend softly called out, "Young master." Lucius remained lost in thought. Day after day, during that entire time, an item was handed out by her. "This is for you." Lucius accepted the letter with utmost reverence. Then read what was written inside. The news provided left Lucius extremely pleased. Everything was in preparation for this day, because that was the invitation letter to the Royal Academy selection test. The Royal Academy, where talents from all over the Empire gather. And on another note, the valedictorian graduate of this academy would be granted a blessing that transcended human limits. And even Atlas Arclight, who had graduated as valedictorian in the past. In his past life, Lucius had witnessed Atlas's abilities. Lord Atlas Arclight back then, Lucius looked at him with an expression of immense admiration, possessing power far beyond human comprehension. "No problem." Lucius watched on without blinking even once. The wound, his hand gripping the paper, tightened to acquire a blessing strong enough to face him. The first goal had been set. "First, I will seize the top spot at this academy." Time passed, and enrollment day arrived in no time. The students' assembly area was extremely noisy. Up above, Celestia and Fran were together. Down below, Lucius had moved along with the other students. The nobility were seated in a separate designated section. His gaze was one of intense concentration. A powerful voice rang out, "Order!" Even a high-ranking official was observing. Right here and right now, the Royal Academy selection ceremony. A command was issued at that very moment. "Will officially begin." A very solemn declaration was voiced. "We will now begin the selection ceremony." Meanwhile, Lucius was observing everything with a highly guarded look. The equipment for the selection test was laid out, accompanied by an explanation. "This year's exam will consist of defense and suppression." Lucius listened quietly as the speaker elaborated, "while ensuring the safety of the rare, dying eggs floating around you." The headmaster added further, "You must suppress the attacking magical beasts, the crystal lizards. Your exam performance will be evaluated by the objects floating above your heads." The appearance of that dragon left everyone in confusion. Next came another item, the scales of judgment, evaluating the defensive capability to protect the eggs and your suppressive capability against threats. The explanation followed right after. Based on these two evaluations, pattern weights will be added to the scales. Passing or failing will be determined by the total number of weights placed on the two pans. The explanation concluded here. The exam will begin shortly. All examinees, please proceed to. The space shifted to the examinees' waiting area. The nobles began to buzz. "Hey, look at that. It's the cursed child of the Elminster house." Everyone cast hostile glances toward Lucius. If it weren't for the leniency of the royal inspectors 12 years ago, he'd be dead by now. There were many others watching as well. However, Lucius focused entirely on a single thing. The trials had begun to get underway. The first challenger, Lilia Magnate. She appeared and chose a peaceful approach to deal with the dragon before her. Turned to ashes. Lilia poured all her might into attacking that dragon. Everything was reduced to ashes. The result was read out by the scales. Suppression rank A, defense rank D, pass. Lilia looked on and clicked her tongue with mild dissatisfaction. The command was given again. Next, this participant achieved a result of defense rank A, suppression rank C, pass. He let out a sigh of immense relief. The testing continued. Next, the examinees each displayed their own strengths and gave it their absolute all to perform the test. Next was Hector's turn to be tested. Next, Hector Gilbert. When he appeared, murmurs broke out. "Look, it's Lord Hector." Everyone offered all sorts of remarks. Word has it he's the new generation prodigy of the royal swordsman. Meanwhile, Lucius on this side just watched quietly. Rupert, a noble family he had never heard of in his past life. Hector drew his sword while muttering a declaration. No need for those tedious parlor tricks of the mages. He focused all his energy on the dragon before him. "The sword of our house." His hand began to draw the weapon. Hector spoke with grim seriousness, simply cutting down the target in silence. The slash was extremely decisive, and Hector didn't even bother looking back at the dragon. Yet, it was struck down, while the eggs remained safe. Hector sheathed his sword. The result shattered only a single egg. The scales began to shift. The giant dragon's body was sliced in two. His result was announced as Suppression Rank S, Defense Rank A. He currently stood in first place. The spectators were left in awe, just as expected from a prodigy. I didn't even have time to blink. It was finally Lucius's turn to compete. The final examinee, Lucius Elminster. The moment he appeared, the spectators gossiped. There he is, the cursed child of the Elminster house. Disgusting. The words directed at Lucius showed not an ounce of courtesy or politeness. After Lord Hector's overwhelming performance, this act isn't even worth being a clownish warm-up. Who knows what on earth he plans to show us? However, Hector watched him with extreme caution. The dragon below had begun gathering energy to attack. Celestia and Fran were so worried they couldn't sit still. And those who had already taken the test also watched with contemptuous expressions. The dragon reared up and spat out a beam of light. At this moment, two men were chatting. Headmaster, how do you think a first-year student can handle a wide-area attack like that? The headmaster muttered and presented his view. Normally, the standard method would be to deploy a wide-area defensive barrier first, to protect the eggs. Meanwhile, Lucius still hadn't made a move. He only watched those rays of light quietly, and suddenly leaped high into the air, to the dragon's own curiosity. Both the headmaster and the man beside him were taken aback in unison. Lucius began to weave his magic. His body moved as fluidly as if he were dancing. This display forced the headmaster to think to himself, unbelievable. He stroked his long beard, evaluating internally. He didn't chant, let alone use defense, and that wasn't even magic, merely pure elements of spiritual energy. Yet he's manipulating them flawlessly with ultra-precise control. The headmaster made a comparison. It's as if he's catching every single raindrop in a pouring downpour. Meanwhile, Lucius remained intensely focused. Rays of light appeared from his fingertips. On this side, the dragon was also gathering energy to strike once more. However, Lucius was faster. The beam of light from his two fingers targeted straight at the dragon's center as a command was issued. Stop. Lucius relaxed his hand right after. The dragon remained motionless rather than being killed. Its heavy body collapsed onto the ground. The scales shifted once more. The stands were stunned into absolute silence. The results were gradually appearing, but then the scales massively dropped a pile of items. This bizarre sight left the spectators and the previously tested examinees gasping. No way. Lucius simply stood quietly in one spot. An illusion quickly materialized in the arena. After a moment of calculation, the final result was announced. Achieved S+ rating in both defense and suppression. Elminster. He is this year's top student. Everyone present in the stands was thrilled by this accurate assessment. Naturally, among them were none other than Celestia and Fran, little young Master Lucius. Even so, alongside those rejoicing, resentful faces emerged. Even so, alongside those rejoicing, resentful faces emerged. Lucius also shot a sharp gaze back to counter that hostile attitude. A moment passed, and the silver-bearded man, standing above the stand, spoke loudly. We will now present the medal to the top new student. Everyone waited in silence for his decision, including Lucius. Without letting too much time pass, the silver-bearded man knitted his brows with solemnity. A medal suddenly appeared in his hand. Its green radiance flew over, wrapping around him. Lucius understood, gently dropping to one knee as the medal was pinned to his chest. He said nothing, merely half closing his eyes to feel everything unfolding. Then the headmaster made the announcement. The awards ceremony concludes here. Starting tomorrow, your academy life will begin. Following those words, all the students dispersed, quickly moving toward the main gates of the academy. The student sorting went smoothly as well. First-year students head to the right. The room assignment list has been posted on the board. Please check your room and proceed there. Fran gave a few coughs to clear her throat. She officially let go, expressing her true emotions. It is deeply regrettable that we cannot witness the young master's heroic posture with our own eyes. But we servants will live day by day, looking forward to seeing how much the young master grows. We will always be waiting. After that emotional outburst, Fran returned to her polished, daily demeanor. As soon as the young master's enrollment was confirmed, they asked me to pass along those words. Lucius felt a bit helpless, but didn't forget to express his appreciation. Thank you. Tell them I will do my best. Saying that, Celestia raised a hand to stroke her son's face. Are you really going? She gently pressed her forehead against his. Even if I tell you not to overwork yourself, you probably won't listen. I pray for your safety. Please don't forget that many others are doing the same. He smiled with a slightly peculiar look. Yes, I know. Mother. However, Lucius didn't linger for long. I have to go. Fran, please take care of Mother for me. No sooner had the words left his mouth than he turned directly and strode forward. The two behind him couldn't see Lucius's sharp gaze. Placing first in the entrance exams was a favorable start toward graduating as valedictorian. He walked right into the luxurious dormitory building assigned to him. But right next to it was a gloomy and dilapidated row of houses. Lilia couldn't help bursting out in anger. What on earth is this? The top student gets to live in a dorm that looks like a palace, while we have to stay in a place no better than a stable, and share a room at that. Lilia seemed far too used to this. No need to make such a fuss. She calmly played chess while Lilia was spitting fire everywhere. Don't set things on fire. Suddenly Lilia swiped her hand, knocking over a chess piece on the board. The best part of this academy is that we can seize that top spot anytime we want. Very soon after, the first class got underway. Lucius fell silent amid the murmurs. Hey look, it's that cursed kid. I wonder what kind of dirty tricks he used to become the valedictorian. It must be some dark cursed magic, right? Hector, standing nearby, felt a bit uneasy whenever someone tried to downplay Lucius's real ability. What if he's actually just that good? At that, he shot the guy a lethal, piercing glare. Don't be an idiot, it's just some cheap trick. At the same time, someone was quietly watching from the roof. Inside, Hector still looked pissed off, even though Lucius didn't seem to care at all. The person on the roof had witnessed the entire scene. A gust of wind blew past, making his cloak billow, and then, with a light spring, the man vanished. Back in the classroom, the kid named Noah muttered to himself, "He's here." Lilia shot him an irritated sideways glance. What? Nearby, Hector was still pretty bitter whenever the entrance exam came up. If this were a real battle, my sword would have. Before he could finish, the man from earlier flashed right past him. Boy Gilbert, cast aside that useless fighting spirit. You won't be needing it for my lecture. Annoyed that someone had just barged into his business, Hector spun around and glared at him. Without a second thought, he talked back, I don't know who you think you are, but I have no obligation to listen to you. He even resorted to disrespectful language. Do you really think you can put on some cheap magic show and scare us? Seeing that, the other students started playing along with Hector's teasing remarks. Are you just trying to make a flashy entrance? For a certified Imperial instructor, you've got zero dignity. The man simply stood in silence, watching everyone's attitude. He felt a bit helpless at the open disrespect the students were showing. Suddenly, the man reached out a sharp-clawed hand right in front of Hector. I will only say this one more time. With a gentle flick of that hand and a cleansing spell, an utterly terrifying and suffocating pressure instantly swept over the entire classroom. Hector's body involuntarily leaned forward. What on earth is this crazy pressure? Even Lilia felt overwhelmingly oppressed. Is he even human? What kind of monster is he? Still, one particular student caught his interest. Well, look at that. He can actually handle this much easily. As for Hector, he was shaking uncontrollably. Deciding they had been punished enough, the man instantly lifted the spell. You'd all better remember this. He paused for a beat before turning back around to face the front. In a low voice, the man gave a stern warning. Academy life starts right now. With every step he took, his voice grew heavier. Bloodline and background. At the end of the day, they mean absolutely nothing. With that, the man took off his hood to reveal his true identity. None other than Valerius. He swept his gaze across every single student, asserting that power is everything. Suddenly, Valerius's brows furrowed slightly as he stopped in front of someone. Lucius happened to catch that probing gaze, finding it rather amusing as the corners of his lips curved upward. Valerius officially announced, "Then let's begin." Standing at the podium, Valerius introduced himself in a chilling voice. My name is Valerius. He looked out at the unfamiliar faces in the lecture hall and elaborated on his role. I am in charge of basic theory here at the Academy. Sitting in the lecture hall and listening to Valerius speak, Lucius studied him closely and felt a slight sense of familiarity. That guy. He recalled meeting Valerius, the evaluator, back when he was a child. Lucius observed Valerius carefully and thought to himself, I never expected him to be an instructor at the Royal Academy. Figures, since he reports directly to the Empire. His spiritual energy is seriously impressive. Lifting his sharp-clawed hand slightly, he made a formal announcement. First of all, I'm going to teach all of you the rules of this academy. Valerius cast a blinding blue spell over the seated students. Your ultimate goal is to graduate as the top of your class. He explained to the students what he had just done in the classroom. That crystal is the academy scoreboard, displaying the rankings of every single student in the school. Looking around, everyone showed clear curiosity about the magic Valerius had just performed. What is that? Our names are written right there. Seeing the students' curiosity, Valerius continued his explanation. This academy ranking is based on your classes and assignments. The results of everything you do here. The students' rankings popped up. 50, Lucius Elminster 51, Hector Arclight. He added the detail the students cared about most. Will cause your rankings to change in real time. 71, Noah Raven 72, Lilia Magnate. Seeing herself ranked below some nobody, Lilia flew into a rage and shouted, Just who the hell is Noah? The illustrious backs of the top-ranking students seemed to flicker into view as he spoke. To graduate as top of your class, you have to break into the top 16 of this academy ranking and compete in the tournament held once every 4 years. The Academy Duel Tournament, and win it. The winner of the tournament would become the top student and receive a special blessing. Hearing this, Lucius couldn't help clenching his fists. A student sitting at the back of the classroom stood up and voiced his frustration loudly. You mean we have to maintain a top 16 ranking for 4 whole years? We won't even have time to breathe. This student was ranked near the bottom of the class, number 400, standing stunned beside his own name. He watched in horror as the number 400 steadily ticked up to 421. Standing at the podium, Valerius coldly dropped a terrifying truth. Naturally, complaining and whining will also be evaluated as part of your capabilities. You'd all be wise to watch your mouths. He conjured up pathetic-looking dolls bearing miserably low ranks, leading into the most important part. Once a year, the bottom 125 students, regardless of the reason. Valerius paused for a moment, his voice turning icy as he crushed the low-ranked dolls in his hand, will be forcibly expelled from the academy. A male student with sprawling long white hair finally understood how the academy maintained its balance. So this is how they keep the balance between the incoming freshmen and the ones who get weeded out. Pointing his hand toward the students gathered before him, he asked a familiar question. Have you all grasped just how harsh this academy is yet? Holding the blue orb in his hand, Valerius excitedly kicked off the new school year. Now then, let's begin our first lesson. The blue orb in his hand slowly rose into the air, releasing an ominous black aura that filled the crowded room. The hot-tempered Lilia shouted again. What? Spatial teleportation magic again. Lucius calmly watched his every move. The white-haired guy could only resign himself to reality. What a monster. In a flash, everyone was teleported to a much more open area. Lucius glanced behind him to check the situation. Behind him, a strange path glowing with an eerie blue light caught everyone's attention. Looking at the expressionless students, Valerius delivered his very first assignment to these fresh arrivals in this fiercely competitive academy. Now then, once again, this is my first lesson. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked toward the path and stated simply, the task is simple. Valerius stepped onto the path, which was shrouded in unsolved mysteries. You must walk completely across this bridge within 1 month. As he walked away, he left behind the bewildered gasps of the students. Huh? Is that really it? This is going to be a piece of cake. Everyone scrambled to be first. Only Lucius stood back in the distance, silently assessing the situation. I'll go first. A bridge like this is nothing. Watch me. The ponytail girl standing behind Hector spoke up cautiously. Sir Hector, sensing something was off about the assignment, he stopped the girl behind him before she could say more. Wait, hold on. Fueled by competitive spirit, everyone rushed forward onto the bridge ahead. A blond young man took a single step onto the bridge and immediately felt something was wrong. Before long, that bad feeling materialized. A violent electric shock paralyzed his entire body. The shock drained the blond guy of all his strength, leaving him unable to stand as he tumbled off the bridge. Before he fell completely over the edge, Hector, who had been watching the whole time, issued a warning. You guys had better stop right now. Looking at the students hesitating in front of the dangerous bridge, he said grimly, unless you want the same fate. Everyone froze in shock, watching helplessly as the blonde student fell down the cliff. A cloaked figure panicked. What's going on down there? Watching Valerius calmly continue walking across the bridge, Lucius figured out his scheme. So that's how it is. He frowned as he analyzed the possibilities. It turns out this bridge drains the spiritual energy of anyone who crosses it. Am I right? Valerius had already reached the halfway point of the bridge. Sensing the anxiety and fear in his student's eyes, he spoke up. Didn't I tell you? My lessons are about basic theory. Power is the foundation of everything. Try to accumulate enough spiritual energy to cross this bridge within a month. Tense to the point of stammering, a student asked hesitantly, Excuse me, Instructor Valerius, about that. What's the historical success rate for this class anyway? Without turning around, Valerius countered with a question. You're asking me that? He did a quick mental calculation before dropping a number that stunned everyone who heard it. In a normal year, I'd say about 20%. Anyone hearing that number momentarily didn't know how to react, as a 20% success rate felt far too low in their eyes. Then, tilting his head slightly, he added with a sinister grin, My apologies, I misspoke. Valerius turned around to face the tense crowd of students. That wasn't the success rate. He took perverse pleasure in watching the micro-expressions on their young faces. That was the survival rate. A wave of nervous chatter broke out over this practically non-existent survival rate. What are we supposed to do now? We've got no choice but to boost our own spiritual energy. Lucius stood quietly amidst the noisy crowd as everyone discussed ways to survive. But can we really increase it enough in just a month? A spark of insight flashed in Lucius's eyes. No, that's not it. Thinking back to the blonde student from earlier, he tried to figure out a solution. Based on that energy absorption rate and a confident estimate of the bridge's length, even someone with a massive reservoir of spiritual energy might not make it to the other side. The corners of his mouth curved into a bright smile as the truth slowly dawned on him. Making us accumulate more spiritual energy is just a smokescreen. Now he held the key to crossing this bridge effortlessly. I figure out how to clear this lesson. As they listened to Valerius's chilling announcement, the students stared at the narrow stone bridge stretching across the murky, fog-shrouded abyss. The survival rate is 20%. A blonde male student echoed in disbelief. A 20% survival rate. The female student beside him chimed in. Are you kidding me? Then that guy who just fell. The atmosphere grew intensely heavy. The students were left pale-faced and shell-shocked. A purple-haired girl collapsed, clutching her head and screaming, Damn it, I'm not about to die in some school assignment. Meanwhile, Lucius kept his composure, silently observing his surroundings. Another brown-haired male student turned around, his voice trembling. I can't do this. I'm telling my mom to withdraw my enrollment. Watching the quitters walk away, Valerius mocked them. A wise decision. People whose wills break this easily would just end up dead on the battlefield anyway. Valerius's ruthless and cold attitude split the students into two extremes. Some stood in sullen, silent submission, while others glared at him with pure hatred. Standing in the middle of the bridge with swirling purple magic wrapping around him, Valerius loudly declared, Now, you have 1 month to train. A golden board suddenly appeared in the sky, displaying the time remaining for the test. The moment he gave the order, the students scrambled off in a panic. Start training. Lucius just stood there staring at Valerius, his eyes glinting with a dangerous edge. Some students ran frantically as the golden board ticked down to 20 days left. Lilia bolted forward at breakneck speed. She charged ahead shouting. Completely ignoring the other students, she crashed into. Irritated, the other students yelled out, Hey, watch it. That's way too dangerous. Covered in sweat and panting heavily, Lilia kept calculating in her head. If my output isn't enough, 3 other male students were competing to carry massive boulders for training. A brown-haired male student looked over and screamed in shock. What? It turned out Lilia was hauling a boulder several times her own size, all by herself, shaking the ground so violently that the nearby students struggled to keep their footing. She drew her conclusion. All I have to do is lift 10 times my current weight. Lilia flashed a triumphant smile, utterly confident and thrilled with her deduction. Elsewhere, Hector dropped to one knee, touching the ground with his hand. He looked out toward the distant, fog-covered mountains. Concentrating intensely, Hector made his prediction. That bridge. He threw a rock in the direction of the bridge. The rock bounced a few times. Keeping his eyes locked on its movement, Hector concluded, looks like once the contact time exceeds a certain limit, the tossed rock was immediately enveloped by a strange purple energy, proving Hector's theory. A curse activates and drains spiritual energy on the spot. His gaze turned serious as he made up his mind. Lowering his stance, Hector grabbed the hilt of his sword with one hand, ready to draw. A fierce red aura, blazing like fire, wrapped around him. He instantly burst forward, the compressed air exploding into a powerful shockwave that blew away the dirt and stones beneath his feet. With one swift motion, he sliced a tree down to its stump. Hector looked pleased with his current strength, confident that it would guarantee him a victory in the competition. The golden board now showed 3 days remaining. Unlike all the other students running around trying to boost their power, Lucius just sat motionless in an empty patch of ground. Lucius focused entirely on the method he had come up with. I found a way to pass this test. And what I need to pull it off isn't spiritual energy. He channeled energy between his palms and concluded, it's the technique to manipulate it. In my past life, to be able to fight with just a tiny amount of spiritual energy, I mastered meticulous control down to the cellular level, achieved through exact needle and thread repetition. Recalling how he mastered that ability in his past life, Lucius remembered slicing 2 wooden dummies in half. I created illusions, but because that power was so overwhelming, it caused a backlash that made Lucius cough up blood. He literally dropped to one knee, walking the tightrope between life and death countless times. Returning to the present, Lucius continued channeling magical energy into his palms, silently concluding, with my past life mastery over spiritual energy, applying it to magic is child's play. The other students looked at Lucius. Even though half the time had passed and he was still sitting in one spot, they speculated, look at that guy. He hasn't done a damn thing since day one. Another student chimed in. Did he give up or something? He definitely must have used a mountain of cash to cheat on the entrance exam. They decided to ignore Lucius and went back to training, continuing to mock him. Standing nearby, Noah heard every word. Even if he is from the Elminster family, he's still just a cursed child. That arrogant rich kid's time is up. She glanced over at him, wondering what he was thinking. The golden board displayed 2 days, 65 minutes, and a few seconds remained. Lilia roared as she swung a massive tree trunk left and right. The board now read 1 day, 9 hours, and 5 seconds. Hector continuously honed his skills, flashing a triumphant grin as he placed absolute trust in his own strategy. With the deadline fast approaching, all the students began gathering at the assembly area, which happened to be right where Lucius was sitting. Glaring at him with utter disgust, Lilia thought to herself, that guy, did he really just sit there and accept his fate from day one? And they actually called him the entrance exam valedictorian. Everyone simply walked on past Lucius. The timer slowly ticked down. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Right then, he opened his eyes, with only 1 second left on the clock. Lucius flashed a mysterious, knowing smirk. As soon as the golden scoreboard showed that time was up, Valerius materialized out of thin air. He landed lightly on his feet and spoke up. All right, time's up. Valerius stood on the far side of the bridge, facing the handful of remaining students. His gaze turned razor-sharp as he commanded, show me what a month of training has done for you. Who's going to step up and cross first? Lucius stood up amid the noisy chatter of students shoving each other around, asking, who goes first? While the rest were still noisily debating, Lilia and Hector stepped closer to the bridge together, bickering. You go. You were so confident yesterday. They both stopped simultaneously right in front of the bridge and spoke in unison. I'll do it. Hector glared menacingly and sneered. No, I'm faster. Lilia wasn't about to back down either, snapping back. Huh? What, are you deaf? Lucius casually turned around as if nothing was wrong and said, It's fine, I'll go first. Lilia screamed in frustration. Huh? In a situation like this, we rock, paper, scissors for it. Any way you look at it, that's how it's done. Amidst all the commotion, Lucius wore a triumphant smirk, giving off an intensely dangerous and overwhelming aura. In the end, Lilia and Hector decided the order with a game of rock, paper, scissors, and she emerged victorious to take the lead position. Hector stared at his open hand in disbelief, shaking with anger. I can't believe I actually lost. A green-haired student watched the two of them casually playing rock, paper, scissors with an underlying sense of envy, thinking to himself, and here I push myself so hard today. He cut right past the two of them and announced, I'm going. Lilia ground her teeth and shouted in rage. Then what was the point of us playing rock, paper, scissors? A few other students rushed up right behind him. She stood on the sidelines, screaming in frustration, while every single student who had just sprinted forward stepped onto the bridge, had their mana completely drained, and could do nothing but scream out in despair. Hector looked at the utter stupidity unfolding before him with pure contempt and scoffed. Idiots. One after another, the students collapsed onto the bridge, not a single one able to make it across. The few who managed to hold their ground muttered curses, unable to take even one more step. His mana pool should have been plenty big enough. Damn it. Watching the students drop like flies, Valerius thought to himself, it's useless. Mana capacity isn't the real key to passing this exam. You have to move faster than the speed at which the bridge drains your mana. You need to constantly refine the mana inside your body to get across. Master the fundamentals of mana refinement. That's the only way to clear this test. When no more students dared step foot on the bridge, he taunted them with a smirk. What's wrong? Hasn't anyone crossed yet? Another student fired back in confusion. What do you mean, what's wrong? We're gonna die if we fall down there. Lilia shoved her aside aggressively and charged straight toward the stone bridge, yelling, Out of my way. She paused at the foot of the bridge for a moment, taking a deep, heavy breath. Lilia's eyes flared with pure determination, fully locked and loaded for battle. She channeled energy around her body and stepped straight onto the bridge. Suddenly, a violent explosion of reddish-orange energy burst out around her, blazing like a roaring wildfire. Valerius observed the sudden surge of power from afar and noted, Now that's an impressive amount of mana. But just as quickly as that newly flared energy had burst forth, it began to slowly fade away. Lilia looked completely drained, gradually sinking to her knees as strands of dark purple magic slowly enveloped her. He closed his eyes, calmly assuming Lilia had reached her limit against the bridge's curse, a force designed to completely siphon away its target's mana. Then, Lilia slammed her foot hard against the stone pathway, and her power exploded outward once again. Valerius's eyes snapped open, utterly stunned by the sudden turn of events. She wrapped her energy around herself once more, her mana flaring up again like an inferno. Lilia growled fiercely, Don't you dare look down on me. I am not losing to some stupid bridge. Watching her sprint across the bridge with everything she had, he couldn't help but marvel. This girl is unbelievable. She's forcing out a massive amount of mana through sheer willpower, completely overwhelming the bridge's drain rate. Just like that, Lilia pushed through and cleared the entire bridge. She stomped her foot heavily on the ground, right next to Valerius, before completely running out of juice and collapsing face first onto the dirt. Panting heavily, she struggled to roll over onto her back. Lilia looked up at him, and even in her totally exhausted state, she flashed a smug grin and taunted, How do you like me now? Valerius kept a totally stone-cold face and said plainly, You pass. Lilia threw her hands in the air, cheering in excitement. Hell yeah. Hector was still standing on the other side of the bridge. He evaluated Lilia's performance, thinking, how terribly inefficient. That kind of reckless drain is only going to drag her down in future battles. Hector recalled his own training and the exact moment he had thrown that stone early. From what I've observed, there's a split-second delay upon contact before the mana siphon actually kicks in. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, making his move. In that case, dropping into a quick draw stance, Hector gathered power around his body, just like Lilia had, thinking, I just need to move faster than it can drain me. He then shot forward past the remaining students with unbelievable speed. Just like that, Hector blitzed across the stone bridge in a flash, the purple wisps of energy failing to touch even a single hair on his head, and he even had time to boast as he ran, as if a mediocre curse like this could ever touch my blade. The moment he reached Valerius, Hector drew his blade and executed a lightning-fast horizontal slash right past him. He flashed a smug smirk that matched Lilia's earlier, brimming with absolute confidence in his lethal technique. Without batting an eye, Valerius calmly delivered his assessment. Crossing the entire distance before the bridge could even begin to drain you. That's some impressive outside-the-box thinking. I'd love to say you truly live up to your title as a genius. But he clenched his fist, keeping his claws extended behind his back, and scolded firmly. However, attempting to assassinate your instructor is completely unacceptable. Hector brushed it off without a care, firing back. Quit with the false accusations. More importantly, don't you have something else to say? Valerius replied short and sweet. You pass. He smirked arrogantly and replied without a hint of humility. Naturally, the students left on the other side were still gasping in awe. So fast. I couldn't see a thing. Man, he really is a genius. Lucius slowly stepped onto the bridge. Lilia, Hector, and Valerius all fixed their eyes on him, curious to see how he intended to cross. One of the students called out, "Look, it's the top-ranked student's turn." They watched as Lucius strolled across the bridge with absolute composure, neither bursting with power like Lilia nor rushing at breakneck speed like Hector. The surrounding students started whispering loudly among themselves. Wait, he doesn't seem to have that much mana, does he? Looks like he can't even use physical reinforcement like Hector either. Valerius merely smiled, keeping his eyes locked on Lucius with an expectant look, waiting for a breakthrough. Now, what are you going to show me, Elminster? The moment he stepped onto the stone pathway, a single flash of blue energy flickered beneath his foot, and then absolutely nothing happened. Lucius walked across as easy as pie, leaving the other students completely dumbfounded. Unbelievable. He's just strolling across with a totally relaxed face. Turns out him taking top spot wasn't just luck after all. Lucius seemed to radiate a faint white aura as he calmly passed by the fallen students who were still trapped by the purple energy on the bridge. Lilia couldn't help but wonder out loud. What's up with him? He looked so plain and unimpressive. Valerius didn't answer her out loud, but thought to himself, a textbook execution from someone who figured out exactly how the bridge works. And just like that, Lucius effortlessly made it to the other side. Valerius closed his eyes, a flicker of disappointment in his heart. Guess I built up my expectations a bit too much. All of a sudden, another student came sprinting across the bridge, shouting in pure joy, I did it. My training actually paid off. The students on the other side started cheering loudly, making Valerius suddenly realize what had just happened. He went beyond all expectations. Hey, we could just walk across normally. Students started flooding onto the bridge, every single one of them hyped up and stroking their own egos. Holy crap, it's real. Of course we can do it. We worked our butts off for this. We made it. Lilia was shocked, but quickly played it cool as if she'd seen it coming all along. Well, look at them actually pulling it off. Hector chimed in with a scoff. Riding a high on crowd mentality? What a bunch of morons. As the students rushed across, Valerius reasoned internally, no, this is... Valerius whipped his head around to look at Lucius with a face full of shock, realization hitting him. At the exact same time, he was refining his mana. He channeled a tiny, precise amount of mana into it, just enough to keep from triggering the curse hidden within the bridge's complex magic circuits. A curse that hadn't been neutralized in a full 1,000 years. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the bridge, making a student ask, "What's that noise?" Neither Lilia nor Hector could hide their shocked expressions either. Just like that, the entire bridge exploded. According to Valerius's quick deduction, Lucius had completely dismantled the curse's spell formula itself. A massive explosion detonated right behind Valerius, sending dust, smoke, and debris flying in all directions. Standing right in front of the apocalyptic scene, he remained unfazed, praising the boy in his mind. What an absolute monster. To think he could go this far. Meanwhile, Lucius stood there nonchalantly like nothing had happened. As the cloud of dust slowly cleared, excited chatter burst out everywhere. Was it just super old and falling apart? Man, if we were one step slower, we would have been toast. A brown-haired student pumped his fist in excitement and cheered. That was way too close, but hey, we made it across. Right as the words left his mouth, another guy nearby spoke up in a gloomy, downcast voice. Yeah, but what about them? His eyes were heavy with sadness and disappointment as he added, the ones who fell first. They tried their absolute best, too. A heavy, eerie silence fell over the crowd in an instant. All of a sudden, Valerius snapped his fingers and spoke in a calm, reassuring tone, "Don't worry." In the blink of an eye, the fallen students from earlier were floating safely right behind him. The sudden twist sent the gloomy student into a total panic as he screamed, "What the heck? Weren't you guys dead?" Valerius didn't pay any mind to his outburst, simply stating in a slow, steady voice, "Everyone present here." He narrowed his eyes slightly and declared, "Has passed the exam." The moment the words left his mouth, a male student stammered out, "Wait, but didn't the ones who fell fail the test?" Hearing that, Valerius casually lowered the floating bodies to the ground and replied, "That's correct. While you were attempting to cross the bridge, we were evaluating each person's mana refinement capabilities. However, the real purpose of this test was to measure your resolve." Silence blanketed the crowd once again. Valerius's voice broke through the awkward quiet. "Even with death staring you right in the face, none of you ran away. You stood your ground and faced it head-on." He emphasized every word. That mental fortitude will serve as a weapon far more powerful than any raw talent. The words left a guy with middle-parted hair, so stunned he instinctively muttered, "A weapon more powerful than talent itself?" Even Hector couldn't hide his shock, bowing his head slightly. Without waiting for anyone to chime in, Valerius quickly continued, "The step you took today holds immeasurable value." Hearing those words, everyone beamed with deep satisfaction. Then, Valerius flashed a mysterious smile and stressed, "Congratulations on passing the exam." His voice grew louder as a warm light shone down from above. "I am truly proud of every single one of you." Before he could even finish, Lilia cheerfully shot back, "Well, obviously." Everyone was buzzing with excitement. Lucius was the only one standing there looking completely unbothered, his sharp eyes slowly scanning everything around him. Suddenly, Valerius spoke up again, making time feel like it was frozen in place. His steady, monotone voice resonated across the vast open space. "Passing the exam and your individual evaluation scores are two completely different things. Now, I will announce the current rankings, starting from the highest evaluated student." The very next sentence out of Valerius's mouth made everyone gasp and turn their heads in shock. Rank 45. Lucius Elminster. Lucius was the only one who remained utterly indifferent, acting like it had nothing to do with him. A black-haired guy couldn't hide his utter shock, blurting out, "Wait, didn't he just take a casual stroll across the bridge?" His question went completely unanswered as Valerius kept going. Next, the other students eagerly speculated, "It's got to be Hector, or maybe Lilia." That comment made Lilia hold her head high with immense pride. Meanwhile, Noah casually turned around to leave, her actions along with Valerius's next words immediately pulling everyone's attention. Rank 46 goes to. Before he could even finish the sentence, Noah froze mid-step. Noah Raven. Hector stood beside her, glaring at her with pure resentment, while the whispers around them started picking up again. "Who the heck is that?" In the blink of an eye, Noah bolted away frantically amidst the murmuring classmates. Ranked higher than Hector? Wait, why is she running away? Seeing that made Lilia completely lose her cool as she roared, "Huh? Higher than me? That scavenger who always wears a hood. More importantly, you're Noah. Right as she finished yelling, two guys next to her whispered under their breath, "You don't have to be so harsh, though, now that I think about it. Did we even have someone like her in our class?" Hearing that only made Lilia angrier as she spat out every word. "We damn well do." While everyone was chatting up a storm, Lucius kept his eyes on Noah, who was now hiding behind a tree. Valerius spoke up again, drawing everyone's focus back. "That concludes all evaluation results. I trust that all of you accept your respective rankings." The system announcements echoed one after another. Rank 57, Lilia Magnate. Rank 102, Lilagi. Meanwhile, Lilia was still fuming, muttering to herself, "She actually beat me." As for Lila, she stole a glance at Lilia and thought to herself happily, "There's no way in hell I could ever beat her." The system voice kept rolling. Rank 47, Hector Gilbert. Rank 96, Chloe John. Chloe kindly checked in. "Is your leg holding up okay?" But she was immediately met with a cold shut down. "Shut your mouth." Over on Lucius and Noah's end, their notifications popped up shortly after. Rank 45, Lucius Elminster. Rank 46, Noah Raven. Once everyone knew their rankings, the chatter broke out all over again. "Damn, I dropped so hard. Your rank is pretty good, right?" "Nice, mine went up." Before long, Valerius called them to order with a strict warning. "All right, now let's talk about Academy life starting tomorrow. Everyone, listen up carefully." His brows furrowed tightly as he announced, "Starting tomorrow, you will all be split into 4-person squads." The students before him couldn't hide their surprise, shouting in unison, "4-person squads." Valerius paid them no mind and pressed on with the briefing. "At this academy, your squad is your core operational unit. Whether attending classes or embarking on missions, you will always operate in groups of 4. His tone grew increasingly serious. "Naturally, the stronger the squad, the tougher the missions assigned to you will be." Then, Valerius emphasized firmly, "However, do not forget that individual rankings are calculated separately and will constantly fluctuate." A chilling, ruthless glint flashed in his eyes as he delivered the punchline. "Which means even your own squad mates are your direct rivals competing for rank." Hearing that, the students looked completely stunned and began muttering nervously, "Teammates, but rivals too? That's brutal." Even so, Valerius quickly regained his cool demeanor and signaled to wrap up. "Your squad assignments and your very first mission will be announced tomorrow." Then he added in a stern tone, "However, the top 4 students will be grouped together to form a single squad." Right when the words dropped, Lucius, Noah, and Hector all showed visible annoyance, while Lilia was the only one who completely lost it and screamed, "Huh, why the hell do I have to be in a squad with these losers?" Meanwhile, Hector casually dropped a line, "Just don't get in our way, and we'll be fine." Watching this scene, the other students couldn't stop whispering among themselves, "They're really putting all the top students into one team?" A short moment later, Valerius nonchalantly wrapped things up. "That's all for today's briefing. Get yourselves mentally prepared." Even so, neither Hector nor Lilia were willing to back down to each other, even though they had technically lost that game of rock, paper, scissors. What had just unfolded right in front of him left Lucius deep in thought. Missions are assigned based on the squad's overall strength. With the highest-ranked members grouped together, will probably be handed the toughest assignments. Even now, Hector and Lilia hadn't stopped grilling Noah, incessantly demanding, "Seriously, who the hell are you anyway? Hold it right there. Why aren't you introducing yourself?" Lucius was the only one who couldn't care less, quickly accepting the reality with a thought. "It might be a hassle, but if I want to get stronger, I just have to roll with it." Valerius suddenly remembered something and spoke up in a slow, deliberate voice. "One more thing. Your first assignment has already been decided. You 4 top rankers." A sly smirk gradually crept onto his lips as he delivered the next line. "We'll be doing it during tomorrow's practical session." That bizarre reaction instantly put Lucius's 4-person squad on high alert. Without keeping them waiting long, Valerius issued his condition, "Land a single hit on me." The next day, Lilia stood there looking tall and proud, declaring arrogantly, "So that's the grand challenge?" Hector chimed in just as loudly with a challenge of his own. "You're drastically underestimating us." Even dead weight like you guys could easily clear a brainless test like this. He didn't forget to assert his dominance beforehand, barking out an order, "Watch closely. I'll show you how it's done first." Meanwhile, Valerius remained completely unfazed, warning them calmly, "Don't get the wrong idea." Immediately after, a massive wave of mana burst outward, causing Lilia and Hector to instantly freeze mid-action. Standing in the center of that surging power, Valerius stated in a flat, monotone voice, "No matter how top-tier you students think you are, not a single one of you can take me on alone." His resolute eyes glinted as a mocking smile broke across his face, issuing a formal challenge. "Come at me all at once. All four of you." Lilia took the bait instantly, fuming with rage and ready to charge headfirst. Hector was no exception, his brow furrowing as he passed judgment on their opponent. Meanwhile, Noah stayed completely calm, standing rooted to the spot. Lucius found it amusing, a satisfied smirk touching the corner of his lips. A dense aura of raw mana rapidly expanded outward from Valerius. Hector couldn't hide his excitement, chuckling under his breath. "All four of us at once? Don't make me laugh." Meanwhile, Lilia ground her teeth and hissed out every word. "I'm taking the first strike, so stay out of my damn way." As for Lucius, he calmly observed their target and deduced, he's a royal evaluator, part of the Empire's absolute top military force. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. In reality, there are probably only a handful of people in the entire Royal Academy who could beat him in a one-on-one duel. Suddenly, a wicked smirk played on Lucius's lips. At that exact moment, Valerius raised a hand and motioned toward them, "Come." In an instant, Lucius, Hector, and Lilia charged forward simultaneously. The smirk on Lucius's face grew increasingly sinister as he thought to himself, "Perfect. Let's see where my current strength actually stands." Facing the fierce onslaught of the four, Valerius remained cool as a cucumber, standing his ground effortlessly. Hector gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, his eyes filled with absolute resolve as he locked onto his target. Yet Valerius merely flashed a provocative smile in the face of his attack. Within a split second, Hector somehow lost sight of his target entirely. He trembled with pure rage, gritting his teeth so hard they practically ground together. Right opposite him, Valerius nonchalantly caught Hector's blade with his bare hand. A faint scoff of contempt escaped his lips just as Lilia came diving down from above, prompting him to glance up to track her trajectory. Even so, she remained utterly unfazed, driving her attack straight down with relentless determination. The fierce fire in Lilia's eyes poured straight into her fist, making her strike hit with even more brutal force. Just like that, a deafening crash echoed across the entire arena as dirt and shattered rock erupted everywhere. However, to her absolute horror, Lilia's devastating punch was casually blocked by Valerius without breaking a sweat. At that critical moment, Noah unleashed her magic from a distance, targeting Valerius directly. The magic crest beneath her feet expanded wider and wider by the second. A brilliant flash of light burst behind Noah, highlighting the sheer amount of effort she was pouring into the spell. Valerius caught onto the anomaly instantly. He tossed Lilia aside like a rag doll to assess the incoming threat, erecting a single barrier that casually swallowed up Noah's strike. Even Hector was forced to dodge Noah's stray magic, cursing in sheer irritation. "Get out of the way, damn it!" Suddenly, Lilia's ear-splitting screech echoed through the air. "Hey you!" Before he could even react, she slammed her hand hard onto Hector's head, leaving him completely stunned. Lilia yelled at him relentlessly, "Don't just jump in out of nowhere! You bastard! Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Watching the two of them bicker like children made Valerius sigh in utter helplessness. Shortly after, his attention was quickly pulled back over to Noah. Suddenly, Valerius's eyes flared with a flick of panic. Lucius was already airborne, swooping down with a heavy strike from above. The cold, calculating look in his eyes made the incoming attack pinpoint accurate. Even Lilia and Hector down below were caught completely off guard by his sudden move. In a matter of seconds, an overwhelming wave of force came crashing down toward Valerius. Despite the pressure, he handled the situation with stone-cold composure. A blinding light erupted along with a dense cloud of dust and debris, forcing the others to instinctively scramble backward. As the dust slowly settled, everyone turned their eyes toward Valerius and Lucius in unison. Only then did Lucius lightly touch down back onto the ground. Valerius remained standing inside the thick veil of smoke, sounding slightly annoyed as he spoke up. Impressively sharp, yet his tone quickly shifted into a taunting drawl. Though I'd really appreciate it if you kids showed a little more respect for Academy property. Valerius casually waved his hand, clearing the dust cloud in an instant to reveal a massive crater torn into the ground. The smirk on his face took on a much more sinister edge. On the opposite side, Lucius bit his lip in clear frustration. Out of nowhere, Lilia charged forward at breakneck speed, screaming at the top of her lungs, "I'm not done with you yet," followed right behind by Hector shouting a grim promise. "Next time, your head comes off." Even so, Lucius stood completely still without moving an inch. He silently observed the chaotic dynamic between the three of them. Before long, both Lilia and Hector were violently blown backward by Valerius. The sight sent a brief flash of shock through Lucius. Everything was spiraling into total chaos, pulling Noah right into the middle of this giant headache. Meanwhile, Valerius acted as if nothing out of the ordinary had even happened. This only drove Lucius deeper into reflection. It looks like he's fighting all three of them at the same time, but that's not what's actually happening. Replays of Valerius's movements kept flashing through his mind. Instead of dealing with them simultaneously, he's taking them down one by one at a speed that's practically imperceptible to the naked eye. First person, then the second, then the third. He carefully noted the exact sequence when Valerius dealt with Hector. The more times he has to switch targets, the slightly wider his opening becomes. After analyzing it thoroughly, he reached his final conclusion. The only blind spot exists within a tiny, cramped space directly behind him, and its direction shifts randomly after every single move. With that realization, a fierce resolve glinted in Lucius's eyes. In that case, I'll pinpoint the exact location of that opening by perfectly timing his attack sequence. Suddenly, Lilia slammed her fist furiously into the ground behind him. She glared ahead with burning rage and screamed, "Don't you dare look down on me!" That outburst actually made Valerius burst out laughing. Right after, Lilia and Hector charged straight at him together, burning with sheer fury. This time, they had Noah backing them up from behind. Suddenly, something unfolded that left her completely speechless. Valerius was casually dodging every single one of their attacks with ease. From Hector's razor-sharp blade to Lilia's earth-shattering punch, Lucius took in the entire spectacle from his high vantage point, seeing right through it all. Meanwhile, Hector and Lilia were still pouring everything into their combined assault. But in the end, Valerius shattered their efforts with a cold declaration. Useless. Noah collapsed on her knees, clutching her head in total distress, while Lilia was sent crashing onto the dirt in utter panic. Hector glared daggers at their opponent. Seizing this exact window, Lucius launched a surprise ambush from above. A sinister smile touched the corner of his lips as he muttered under his breath, "Got you." Immediately after, a blinding flash of light exploded at the exact spot where Valerius stood. Lucius landed right in front of Valerius, who was forced to take the hit head-on. Behind them, Hector and Lilia shielded their eyes, blinded by the searing glare. In a fraction of a second, the entire surrounding area seemed to be swallowed whole by the brilliant light. Witnessing the sight, Lucius couldn't help but crack a satisfied grin. However, it wasn't long before Valerius stood before them once again, completely untouched. The terrifying reality forced a bewildered shout out of Lilia. "Are you freaking kidding me?" Noah was equally stunned, thinking in horror. Even a strike that massive couldn't leave a single scratch on him. Before they could even gather their wits, Valerius's raspy voice echoed softly. "I'll give you credit for forcing me to use defense magic." With those words, he shifted his gaze over to Lucius. Yet the next line out of Valerius's mouth carried a distinct note of mockery. "Though it seems I build up my expectations a bit too high for you lot." Clear anger flared in his eyes as he gritted out every syllable. If you can't clear this exercise within the next hour, this 4-person squad will be disbanded, and you'll be reassigned to teams starting from the bottom classes. That revelation sent a wave of furious indignation through Lilia and Hector. Without giving them a chance to argue back, Valerius casually reiterated, "Like I said, as a 4-person squad, think long and hard about what that actually means. Besides, I'm taking things seriously from here on out." His expression looked grim, and his words carried an undeniable edge of irritation. "You'd better figure out an actual strategy instead of just mindlessly searching for a flaw." Lucius lowered his head slightly, quietly taking in their instructor's every move. During the team's huddle, Lilia was throwing a total fit, stomping her feet aggressively and screaming, "He's so damn annoying! What the hell is his deal? Is that guy even human?" Suddenly, she went dead silent, an anomaly that immediately caught Noah's attention. Lilia marched right up to Lucius and barked aggressively, "Hey, you!" Without waiting for him to reply, she pressed on to confirm, "Yeah, you got a plan, don't you?" That direct approach put Lucius into a cautious, analytical mindset. Lilia pointed right at his face without an ounce of hesitation, bossing him around. "As much as I hate to admit it, you were the only one who actually forced him to drop a defensive spell. So I'm listening this time. Out with it, spit it out." Suddenly, she clenched her hands into tight fists. Gritting her teeth in sheer indignation, Lilia ground out every word. "There's no way in hell I'm losing in a place like this." Seeing her reaction, Lucius spoke up in a cautious tone. Just a second ago, his reaction had caught Lilia and the others completely off guard. Even so, Lucius calmly laid out what he had observed. "When my spell made impact, I noticed a slight distortion in the mana flow of his defense barrier." Hearing this threw Lilia off even more, making her mutter under her breath, "I was the one who asked," but he actually gave a real answer. Meanwhile, Hector crossed his arms coldly, asking with complete indifference, "Just because you saw a tiny distortion?" Before the words even settled, Lucius laid out his theory with absolute composure. "It's highly likely that his defense magic concentrates mana at the exact point of impact to boost its defense." He kept painting the picture in his head. A single strike was useless, but 3 people combining their power might actually break through. Returning to reality, Lucius's steady voice broke the silence. "In other words, if we hit multiple spots simultaneously, his mana will be forced to split, dropping his overall defense." Hearing that, Lilia finally came around and agreed. That actually makes sense. What Lucius just laid out left Hector deep in thought. "You're telling me he saw through that trick in the split second he attacked?" Even Noah beside them couldn't hide her admiration, thinking incredible. Right next to Lucius, Lilia clenched her fist tight as the flames around her hand flared up brighter and hotter. A confident smirk touched her lips as she stated firmly, "So basically, the more attacks we dump on him all at once, the better, right?" A confident smirk touched her lips as she stated firmly, "So basically, the more attacks we dump on him all at once, the better, right?" However, Hector scoffed in pure contempt and warned, "I'm not doing this just to help you out, Elminster." Out of nowhere, Noah chimed in with firm resolve. "If it's raw volume of attacks you need, leave that to me." Before long, Lucius's squad stepped back up to face Valerius. The sight brought a touch of quiet satisfaction to Valerius, though he maintained his mocking front. "Let's see how you plan on attacking me this time." Right on cue, Lilia took the lead and sprinted forward, rallying the group. "All right then, let me hit him." Valerius stood calmly inside his spherical barrier, letting the squad rain down everything they had on him. From a distance, Noah was relentlessly channeling her mana to increase the volume of incoming strikes. Even so, Valerius scoffed in disdain, declaring, "Trying to overwhelm me with numbers? But with this level of power." At that exact moment, a look of pure hatred flared in Hector's eyes. Immediately after, he poured every last drop of his strength into a single strike. The second the tip of his blade made contact with the barrier, a flicker of panic crossed Hector's face, but he quickly roared at the top of his lungs, "Magnate!" Taking the cue, Lilia charged right up behind him without missing a beat. She drove a devastating punch straight into the pommel of his sword. Even with their combined force, their strike didn't seem to faze Valerius in the slightest. Suddenly, The very first hairline cracks began spreading across his shield. Catching sight of the cracks, Valerius actually turned his head and praised them. Now that's the best strike you kids have pulled off all day. But right after, he launched a sudden counterburst, adding with a smirk, too bad. Hector's sword was gradually blown backward by the sheer force. Both he and Lilia were gripped by fear as the exact same thought hit them. I don't have a single drop of energy left. At the same time, Noah began to panic from her position further back. Suddenly, Lilia collapsed to her knees. At that critical juncture, Lucius swooped in to back up her and Hector. Nothing remained in his eyes except absolute determination as he reassured them continuously, "It's not over yet." Just like that, all three of them joined forces to unleash a single lethal strike. Ear-splitting roars burst out from Lilia and Hector in unison. Watching from afar, Noah flinched in shock, instinctively taking a step back. Hector's blade, at that exact instant, was surging with a terrifyingly overwhelming amount of raw power. Lilia ground her teeth with fierce determination, a fierce look that even caught Hector completely off guard. Valerius stood frozen on the spot, caught completely off guard. Moments later, his defense barrier shattered into pieces under the combined assault of Lucius's squad and Hector's blade. A violent shockwave surged outward in every direction. Valerius turned his face away slightly. Meanwhile, Lucius's squad displayed a whole spectrum of reactions, ranging from pure rage to sheer shock and calm composure. A long gash had opened across Valerius's face, yet a satisfied smile touched his lips. He slowly turned his head toward the four of them and spoke up, "You pass." Hearing those words, Lilia cheered in sheer excitement. "We did it." Noah let out a heavy sigh of relief, muttering under her breath, "Thank goodness," but then suddenly collapsed to her knees, with Lilia and Hector sinking to the ground right alongside her. Lucius was the only one still standing tall and proud. She smirked arrogantly and reminded him, "You'd better be grateful for my power." Hector, dripping with sweat, kept up his tough act. "Not a bad performance. I suppose I wouldn't mind taking you under my wing as a minion." Before the words could even settle, the other party shouted back in utter horror, "Say what?" Hearing that, Hector snapped back impatiently, "I'm not repeating myself." Suddenly, an eerie, heavy silence blanketed the area. Lucius looked down, caught in a moment of pure shock as a thought flashed across his mind. What was that just now? He instinctively recalled the exact moment he channeled power into the blade, reflecting, "In that fraction of a second, my magic fused directly into it." The phantom image of Zeno materialized in his mind, striking a deep chord within him. It was as if it had manifested as an actual blade. Two distinct gazes sharing a single resolve, a complete harmony of magic and swordsmanship. Reaching that realization, Lucius flashed a sinister smirk and deduced, "I can actually refine this into a physical form." He stared intently at his own hand, completely tuning out Lilia and Hector's heated argument. Valerius slowly brought a hand up to touch the wound on his cheek, declaring, "You've cleared the test." Immediately after, he took a step forward and left them with a parting advice. "What I wanted you to learn from this exercise was teamwork. You're still green, but it seems you're starting to get the hang of it." Before vanishing into thin air, Valerius made sure to emphasize, "Don't forget the synergy you achieved in that final strike." In the blink of an eye, he faded into nothingness. Lilia and Hector slowly pushed themselves back up to their feet. Meanwhile, Lucius remained deeply absorbed in his own thoughts. That last attack, it felt like swordsmanship and magic intertwining as one. With that thought, he involuntarily clenched his fist into a tight ball, a sinister smirk spreading across his face. "If I can master this, it'll become a lethal weapon against that guy." Shortly after, deep inside the Royal Academy's library, Lucius was intently scouring through a book in his hands for information. The dense blocks of text laid out the fundamental theories of mana. According to the text, once transformed, mana flows through internal pathways within the body, converting either into magic power used by mages or aura utilized by swords. That piece of information instantly brought back the expressions Lilia and Hector had made earlier that morning. It was common knowledge that a person was born with only one of these two pathways. The more he read, the deeper Lucius sank into contemplation, That strike was triggered by layering my magic on a Hector's swordsmanship aura. In other words, it's a technique that requires two people working together. Could I pull off something like this entirely on my own? Suddenly, a specific passage in the book caught his eye. The text read, "Furthermore, it is said that in extremely rare instances, individuals possess both magic and aura pathways, and the founder utilized both to fuse swordsmanship." Reading up to this point, Lucius felt a surge of excitement, thinking to himself, this is it. As time went on, he decisively swung his first practice strike, holding on to the thought. Later, when I tested out on my own, Lucius's body radiated a dense wave of raw magic power. A trace of melancholy touched his eyes as he admitted to himself. The result was a failure, but Lucius kept his gaze locked onto the sword in his hand. Yet there was a faint, familiar sensation that closely resembled the aura pathways from my past life. With that realization, his resolve burned even brighter as he emphasized internally, "It's entirely possible that the aura pathways I pushed to the absolute limit in my previous life are still lying dormant inside me. If I can awaken them and master the magic of this current life." A wicked, hypnotic smile spread across Lucius's face as he mused, "I might just achieve a fused power equal to the founders." Meanwhile, deep in the vast forest where students gathered while Kathy hovered casually overhead, the megaphones in her hands began crackling to life. Kathy flashed a beaming smile and spoke up, "So great to see you all. I'm your instructor, Ms. Kathy. Can everyone hear me loud and clear?" The moment she finished speaking, noisy chatter broke out down below, so loud. "She's way too energetic." Despite the commentary, Kathy continued her overly enthusiastic introduction. "Today's special practical session is for squads ranked between 30 and 100 out of the 500 total students academy-wide. It's a joint exhibition match between the upper classes." Hearing that, the crowd started whispering among themselves once again, "Oh, for real? Hey, look over there, it's the rookies." The upperclassmen glared with eyes full of murderous intent, growling under their breath. Everybody better push themselves to the limit to raise their rankings. Taking the scene before him, Lucius fell deep into thought. Those guys hold higher ranks than us. Mocking laughter from the upperclassmen rang out continuously without sign of stopping. All of a sudden, Lilia flew into a total rage, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Don't you dare glare at me!" Immediately after, the surrounding atmosphere sank into a suffocating, dead silence. Lilia's impulsive outburst made Hector groan in sheer annoyance. Out of nowhere, a massive guy shoved her aside, sending her tumbling down. Refusing to back down, Lilia barked right back at him, "Hey, big guy." Seeing that, a man with tied-up hair rushed to explain, my bad. I'm pretty huge, so it's tough to see down there." The moment she laid eyes on him, even Lilia was taken aback, thinking to herself, "Damn, this guy is huge." The two guys facing her kept apologizing profusely. "Cut him some slack, will ya?" Suddenly, Kathy let out a delighted giggle from up above as she made her announcement. "The rules are super simple. A spirit orb has been placed inside the hollow of a gigantic tree right in the heart of the mangrove forest." Just mentioning the hollow brought forth a radiant, magical glow from within it, and she continued, "Whichever squad touches it first wins." Hearing that, Lucius couldn't help but feel curious, his mind naturally wandering toward the spirit orb. Without keeping him guessing for long, Kathy cleared up the details. The spirit orb is a crystal formed from highly concentrated, ultra-pure mana. It's a special academy item that dramatically boosts your body's base mana capacity when absorbed. Don't you guys super want to get your hands on it? Before she even finished, a red-haired guy chimed in with excitement. "Boost your base mana capacity?" Right on his heels, a blonde student asked enthusiastically, "You mean skipping years of brutal training in a single instant?" Even Lucius felt a surge of intrigue, a sinister smirk creeping onto his face. A sudden realization flashed through his mind. This is it. If I can channel a massive burst of pure mana all at once, I can forcibly awaken the dormant aura pathways from my past life. Kathy's steady voice cut right through Lucius's train of thought. Engaging other squads in combat is totally allowed. The time limit is until sunset. The second the words dropped, the rookies frantically surged forward with wild excitement. Meanwhile, the experienced veterans merely flashed wicked, knowing smiles. Lucius's squad was no exception, fixing their eyes intently on the path ahead. A signal flare shot up into the sky right after, and Kathy shouted at the top of her lungs, "All right, let the game begin." Lucius immediately bolted forward, charging deep into the forest. His teammates scrambled right behind him, keeping pace at his side. Other groups gradually caught up to his speed, showing zero hesitation in flashing, contemptuous smirks. An aggressive blonde guy pulled out his weapon and announced brazenly, "Sorry about this, rookies." Hearing that, Hector muttered in utter confusion, "Don't tell me these guys are actually ranked higher than us?" Before he could even finish his sentence, the blonde guy and his teammates lunged forward, barking orders, "Bite the dust right here." In the next instant, a heavy blow came crashing down toward the dirt. Lucius reacted in a flash, blasting the attacker backward in a total frenzy of panic. The terrifying sight left even Hector blurting out in disbelief, "Huh, what the heck?" Lucius spun around, warning them in a sharp, serious tone, "Don't let the leaderboard fool you. You'll get it if you think back to that practical session. We are strong." Lucius's nonchalant response left his teammates momentarily stunned. Out of nowhere, a blonde girl stepped out, barking arrogantly, "Who did you just call strong?" Right after her, another blonde guy chimed in with pure disdain, "Too bad for you, but the real fight starts right now." Hearing those words, Hector demanded furiously, "The real fight." At that, a guy with cornrows charged forward aggressively to confirm, "Hell yeah, that's right. The real rookie hunt." The blonde student flashed a victorious smirk, taunting them with a parting line, "We'll gladly take your rankings off your hands through this little rookie hunt." On the very first strike, a barrage of attacks came flying straight at Hector like a raging storm. Witnessing the terrifying onslaught, he could only grit his teeth hard and prepare to strike back. The moment their mana collided, a deafening explosion echoed through the air. The shockwave left the blonde student completely horrified, instinctively stumbling backward. Meanwhile, Hector couldn't believe the destruction he had just unleashed, standing there completely dazed for a long moment. But right after, the guy with cornrows lunged toward Lilia, roaring at the top of his lungs, "Don't get cocky." Pure, unadulterated savagery was plastered across every single one of their faces. Facing this sudden onslaught, Lilia couldn't help a brief flicker of panic. However, in the very next second, pure rage consumed her entire body. Lilia clenched her fist tight and charged headfirst at her opponent. Her first punch was blocked by a massive broadsword. Right after came a second broadsword, locking her down completely. Even so, Lilia held her ground with fierce determination, spitting out every word, "Don't you dare." Seeing her intense resolve, the two men with cornrows were caught completely off guard. Both broadswords were instantly engulfed in fierce, raging flames bursting from Lilia. The moment the blade shattered into pieces, she roared at the top of her lungs, "Look down on me." As silence fell over the area, a look of utter shock washed over Lilia's face. At the same time, over on Noah's side, she was being surrounded by her opponent's freezing frost magic. She bit her lip hard in fear, but a sudden thought flashed across her mind, "We are strong." Before she could even make a move, Hector and Lilia swooped in to rescue her in an instant. Noah quickly summoned a magic circle, reassuring herself internally, "It's fine." He said that in the blink of an eye, the icy shards airborne were brought under control, and Noah thought to herself, "And I guess that includes me too." Even so, she couldn't help feeling the pressure, gritting her teeth tight. Before long, the airborne ice shards shattered completely into dust. Lilia grabbed the scarred cornrow guy and huffed him forward, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Go die." Not stopping there, she openly praised Noah. "You actually know how to fight." Even Hector muttered under his breath, "We actually beat them." Suddenly, Lucius stepped up beside them and remarked, "Is it over already?" That single question immediately put the rest of his teammates back on edge. But in the next second, Lucius signaled, "Let's move." Every single move they had just pulled off was being watched by Kathy through her scrying orb. She couldn't help but marvel. Top 5 squads wiped out just minutes after the start. And to think the ones who took them down were a team of rookies. The visuals of Lilia, Hector, and Noah sparked Kathy's curiosity, making her murmur repeatedly. Impressive, but the sheer power of those three. Suddenly, she lightly touched the orb, and Lucius's face slowly materialized on the surface. Kathy thought to herself, this kid. Kathy calmly pieced the whole picture together. She instinctively deduced. With just a single line, he rallied the spirits of all three of them, all while possessing enough raw power to single-handedly take down upperclassmen. Reaching that conclusion, a sinister smile spread across her face as she blurted out, "Just who on earth are you?" Meanwhile, the boy in question was still sprinting tirelessly through the forest, Lucius Elminster. At that exact moment, Lucius's squad was being watched from afar by an unknown party. A pair of binoculars flickered with an eerie light continuously. These spectators were none other than the group belonging to the guy with the tied-up hair. Deep in the vast forest, Lucius's squad took the lead, with countless other teams trailing behind them. Lilia sprinted forward recklessly, yelling out loudly, "We're here, right up ahead." Meanwhile, Hector kept nagging her, "Stay sharp. There's another squad right on our tail." Before long, Lucius's group arrived beneath the massive ancient tree. A wondrous light shone down continuously from above. Seeing the glow, Lucius and his teammates picked up their pace even further. Suddenly, he picked up on something out of the ordinary. Lucius halted abruptly, uttering a quiet warning that caught his teammates in a state of sudden shock. "Stop." The second he said it, Lilia lost her cool, barking at him, "What the hell are you talking about? They're gonna beat us to it." But he simply replied with absolute composure, "Just listen to me." In the very next moment, Lilia's eyes widened in sheer horror as she witnessed the scene unfolding before them. The shard of pure mana shattered completely into pieces in a fraction of a second. That sight left Hector and the others frozen in utter shock. Out of nowhere, Noah leapt forward frantically. A massive pair of terrifying jaws erupted from right beneath the squad and the ancient tree. It was a massive sea monster with glowing red eyes. The apocalyptic scene left everyone present paralyzed with fear and utter confusion. Lucius and his teammates were the only ones standing firm, fully primed for battle. Through the orb, Kathy watched the helpless screams of the students unfolding below. However, a male instructor with sideswept hair cut in to interrupt, frantically reminding her, "What in the world is that? We need to call off the exam and request immediate backup right now." Yet Kathy merely stretched her arms leisurely. A moment later, she cheerfully shot him down. "No way. Let the exam continue as planned." Hearing that, the male instructor blew his top, roaring at her, "Have you completely lost your mind?" Kathy slowly spun around on her heels and replied casually, "Little unexpected hitches like this happen all the time anyway." Before she could even finish her sentence, the instructor with sideswept hair behind her cut and snapped angrily, "Don't be ridiculous." Even so, Kathy remained completely unfazed, stating calmly, "Besides anyone who dies here." Though she left her sentence hanging, everyone present felt a cold shiver run down their spines. Kathy cast her gaze toward the horizon, her tone remaining flat and indifferent. Wouldn't survive on a real battlefield anyway. While understanding the underlying point, the male instructor was still left stunned, muttering under his breath, "Even so." Suddenly, Kathy spun on her heels, flashing a gentle, sweet smile as she whispered, "Just kidding." The smile at the corners of her lips grew increasingly eerie and hypnotic. "If things truly get out of hand, you boys can just leave everything to this queen bee." The moment the words left her mouth, an eerie, heavy silence blanketed the area. A quick thought flashed across Kathy's mind. Still, there shouldn't be any magical beasts in this sector in the first place. She slowly opened her eyes, a look of deep contemplation settling over her face. Something's definitely off. Meanwhile, deep inside the forest, a chaotic and violent free-for-all was underway. The students showed zero hesitation, charging headfirst to attack the magical beast. Lethal blows rained down upon the creature without a single moment of rest. A male student's sword was knocked violently backward, making him snap in sheer irritation. Are its scales being reinforced by the spirit orbs? Noah and the other mages were pouring all their efforts into holding the beast back with magic. A barrage of spell circles expanded and launched straight toward their target. Just like that, a blinding flash of light instantly swallowed the entire surrounding area. Moments later, as the thick cloud of dust gradually settled, Noah calmly observed the scene up ahead. The gigantic magical beast lay motionless on the ground. A male student gasped in utter horror. Not even a single scratch. In the very next second, the monster thrashed its tail and dived beneath the lake amidst the panicked whispers of the crowd. What do we do now? What do you mean, what do we do? What can we do? All of a sudden, the magical beast burst onto the shore at breakneck speed. It charged directly toward the spot where the students were gathered. Its sheer rampage sent everyone scrambling in terror as desperate screams echoed through the air. This is bad. Run. It's going to swallow us whole. Out of nowhere, Lucius charged straight forward, catching everyone completely off guard. Voices full of doubt immediately broke out all around. What on earth does he think he's doing? Has he completely lost his mind? In the blink of an eye, Lucius stood face to face with the gigantic behemoth. Down below, Lilia screamed at the top of her lungs in desperate concern. You total idiot, Elminster! The second the beast lunged to attack Lucius, the onlookers seemed paralyzed with pure terror. Meanwhile, a satisfied smile touched his lips as he slowly extended a hand forward. Even so, Lucius was swallowed whole by the beast in a single gulp. Lilia and Hector stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Sheer panic gripped them both as the massive creature dived once more to the bottom of the lake. Lucius's reckless move immediately drew harsh scolding from the other male students. Did that stupid, useless bastard have a death wish? This is exactly why I hate rookie freshmen with zero real combat experience. But suddenly, the beast shot up into the open sky at an astounding, unthinkable speed. The sight made several students cry out in terror. Hey, look up there! Unlike before, the creature was rocketing directly into the heavens. It seemed to have zero intention of targeting anyone on the ground. Seeing this made Noah blurt out in panic. If a creature that massive plunges back into the water from that height, the resulting tsunami will swallow this entire area whole. Suddenly, a brilliant, blinding light erupted right above the creature's head. Right after, a violent shockwave expanded in every direction, freezing the remaining students dead in their tracks. Even Hector and Lilia stood there in absolute awe. Every single I was glued to the sky, holding their breath for the final outcome. Lucius stood tall and majestic right in the center of a gigantic magic circle. The sight made a male student stammer in disbelief. Did he just blow it up from inside all by himself? Meanwhile, Lucius admired the glowing blue orb in his hand with a wicked, captivating smirk. A smug whisper escaped his lips. Got it. Lucius slowly touched down onto the ground under the bewildered gazes of everyone present. The radiant light emanating from his position made Lilia and Hector stare with wide, incredulous eyes. Lucius merely flashed a sinister smile as he held the crystal orb high in his hand. Out of nowhere, Kathy materialized, announcing in a soft, airy tone, "All right, the practical exercise is officially over." The second her declaration dropped, everyone turned in unison to look up at her. Kathy delivered her official order over the megaphone. All students report back to the academy immediately. Her sharp, calculating gaze flicked over toward Lucius as a pleasant smile touched her face. Lucius seemed to pick up on her gaze instantly. A blue-haired male student muttered in sheer frustration, "I can't believe we got outplayed by a bunch of first years." Shortly after, Lucius and his teammates picked up their pace and walked out of the forest. Lilia placed her hands on her hips, cheering excitedly. "Just as I thought. Piece of cake." Even Hector chimed in casually, "I'd rather face off against someone stronger." Witnessing their banter, Noah couldn't help but chuckle softly. Suddenly, Lucius's flat, steady voice broke the air, instantly drawing Lilia's attention. The fact that his footsteps came to a halt made her start speculating. Lilia stared intently at the boy standing opposite her, silently questioning, "Who on earth are you really?" Meanwhile, Lucius kept his eyes locked onto the shard of pure mana resting in his palm. A sudden realization flashed across his mind. So this is a spirit orb. The crystal glowed brighter by the second as he noted. There's no mistaking it. The mana condensed inside is ridiculously dense. Lucius's face reflected off the glowing surface of the orb as he thought to himself. This thing should be more than enough to awaken my aura pathways. Suddenly, a noise rustled nearby, catching the attention of Lilia and the others. The newcomer was none other than the guy with the tied-up hair, who spoke in a slow, drawling tone. "You kids are pretty tough, huh?" Right behind him, the large guy chimed in. "We were so terrified we couldn't even move an inch." Recognizing them instantly, Lilia blurted out, "It's the guy who bumped into us this morning." The man with tied-up hair flashed a friendly, warm smile, showering them with praise. "You guys really blew me away. What a performance. I can barely believe you're just first-year students." This overly familiar attitude immediately drew Lucius's watchful eye. The man seemed to pay Lucius no mind, bursting into a friendly laugh and teasing, "Lucius being strong is a given, but you other three have incredible mana too. Everyone looks so cool. You've really won me over." Clap, clap. The large guy suddenly stepped forward, making a proposition. "We might be weak, but we've been at the academy for a long time, so we can definitely help you out." Immediately after, the man with tied-up hair backed him up. "I may be an upperclassman, but I really hope we can be friends." Seeing the outstretched hand hanging in the air, Lilia fell into a brief silence. But a moment later, she pulled off her glove and whispered softly, "Fine then." In a fraction of a second, both sides prepared to shake hands. The man with tied-up hair maintained his gentle, harmless smile. Suddenly, he violently slammed Lilia backward onto the ground. The sudden assault sent a surge of sheer terror through her. Just like that, a deafening crash shattered the quiet atmosphere. Noah and Hector turned pale with shock at the horrifying scene. Lilia lay there, completely knocked out cold. Luckily, Lucius caught her just in time, demanding sharply, "What the hell do you think you're playing at?" His razor-sharp gaze scanned the aggressors, growling out every syllable. The practical exercise is already over. His words only drew a collective wave of snickers from the group before them. The man with tied-up hair narrowed his eyes, assessing Lucius with a nonchalant drawl. "You really are impressive." In the next second, he extended his hand once more, adding, "The absolute finest prize we could have ever hoped for." That gesture made Hector instinctively take a step back in fear. The man's raspy voice echoed through the air. "Have you kids ever heard of the swamp dwellers?" The second those words dropped, a suffocating silence fell over the area. Noah couldn't hide her terror, muttering under her breath, "The swamp dwellers." Before she could finish, the leader cut in, "This academy has only one absolute rule to stay enrolled. Every year, the bottom 125 ranked students are expelled." The large guy added right after, "In other words, as long as you stay out of that bottom 125, you can stay at this academy indefinitely." The leader's eyes suddenly took on a pathetic, pitiful look as he explained, "We could never climb high enough to receive a blessing. Cruel, isn't it? But we were never ranked low enough to get expelled, either." He's had to watch his own peers leave him in the dust year after year. Students like us just keep getting older, chained to this academy year after year. The more he spoke, the more sinister his tone became. "They call us the swamp dwellers." The moment he finished, Lucius asked bluntly and coldly, "What do you swamp dwellers want?" The man with tied-up hair threw his head back and burst into a loud laugh, stating, "We've been stuck here far too long. We could never break past average ranks, and before we knew it, we got old." His gaze grew increasingly hollow as he emphasized, "We even lost the right to bear our own family names." Hector couldn't hide his disgust after hearing the story, sneering openly. "So you're nothing more than washed-up failures clinging to this place because you can't let go." Hearing that, the man buried his face in his hands, screaming out in utter despair. "That's right. We lost everything. There aren't many options left for washed-up nobodies like us to turn things around." A frantic look flashed in his eyes as he looked down, his voice dropping to a low whisper, "Until we receive a blessing and reclaim everything we lost." Suddenly, his tone turned dark and eerie. "We will resort to any means necessary." Before the words even settled, Hector blurted out in shock, "What on earth is that?" Deep in the shadows further back, Countless human skulls were stacked into grim piles. Noah's eyes widened in sheer terror. She reflexively manifested a massive magic circle beneath her feet. A powerful surge of mana burst from Noah, blanketing the surrounding area. The large guy smirked slightly, after which both he and the leader raised their hands high into the air. The sight made Hector grit his teeth in pure rage. The enemies before them were relentlessly siphoning off Noah's mana. The energy swirling around them grew denser by the second. The leader's throat bobbed slightly as the nearby skulls began floating up into the air. His demonic voice echoed through the clearing. It's coming, it's almost here. The large guy beside him cheered in sheer ecstasy. Man, this feeling is incredible. He pointed a finger at Noah, his voice dripping with greedy hunger. Now then, let me keep draining you dry until you drop dead. As her magic power rapidly drained away, Noah stayed sharp enough to scream, "Fall back fast." Even so, the large guy continued siphoning her mana without a single hitch. Out of nowhere, Hector lunged forward, catching Noah off guard. His eyes locked onto the pile of skulls sitting right behind the large guy. Hector furrowed his brow tightly, making a deduction about that jar. In the very next second, he bolted straight toward the hourglass. Hector struck out decisively with zero hesitation. In a flash, he successfully shattered the swamp dweller's hourglass into pieces. However, something unexpected occurred, making Hector gasp in sheer horror. What? Without anyone noticing, the large guy had materialized right behind him, clamping a hand tightly around Hector's neck as he whispered, "Too bad for you." As Hector's magic power was rapidly drained away, the large guy taunted him, "Only those who activated the jar can actually touch it." At that critical moment, Lucius struck out without warning. His eyes flared with absolute, unadulterated fury. Replays of the large guy's earlier actions sent Lucius deep into thought. That jar absorbs magical attacks. Paired with the memory of the guy taunting Hector, it all clicked, and it also drains the energy of anyone who physically touches it. Reaching that realization, Lucius muttered under his breath. In that case, in the next split second, he delivered a lethal, devastating kick straight toward the large guy. Unable to react in time, the guy took the full impact of the brutal strike head-on. In an instant, the large guy was sent flying backward, while Hector tumbled to the dirt. A massive crash exploded alongside a cloud of dirt and debris. Lucius smirked in amusement, remarking, "Looks like physical attacks still work just fine." Shortly after, as the dust slowly cleared, the silhouettes of the large guy and the leader emerged once more. At that moment, Lucius stepped up to the side of Hector's fallen sword. The sight left Hector breaking out in a cold sweat, thoroughly stunned. Hector called out anxiously as he watched Lucius slowly pick up the blade. "What are you doing? You're a mage, aren't you?" The moment Lucius gripped the hilt, he responded decisively, "No." He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the weapon in his hand as his calm voice echoed softly. "Originally, I was trained." His subtle stance sent a wave of panic through the enemies facing him. Suddenly, Lucius emphasized every single syllable. As a swordsman, the smile on the corner of his lips took on a deeply menacing edge. Lucius stood his ground, fully primed for battle. A sinister smile touched his face as he locked his sharp gaze onto his opponents. The man with tied-up hair kept mocking him. "A sword." The large guy beside him chimed in with equal disdain. "Is the little mage trying to play swordsman now?" Suddenly, a flash of light burst through the dense forest canopy. Before the large guy could even finish his sentence, Lucius closed the distance right up to his face, cutting in with an icy reply. "Amateur or not, why don't you find out for yourself?" Following a barrage of his attacks, the two men before him let out panic screams. However, the man with the tied-back hair managed to dodge the initial strikes. He aggressively raised his arm to block the incoming attack. Even so, Lucius's eyes didn't show a single flicker of hesitation. On top of that, he deftly maneuvered his blade. This quick move brought the edge of the sword flush against the tied-haired man's face. Forced on the defensive, the man was driven backward. But right after that, Lucius moved in for the quick kill. Lilia caught a glimpse of his severed head hitting the ground. Terrified, her eyes went wide as she stammered out, "No way." Meanwhile, Lucius remained dead calm, staring straight ahead. He casually turned around and walked away. Watching it unfold, Horo was also left stunned, thinking to himself, no way. Did he just pull off a technique like that without using any mana or battle aura? The more he thought about it, the more terrified he got. How the hell do you have a skill like that? Suddenly, Lucius locked onto the bald guy and charged straight at him. Caught completely off guard, the guy couldn't dodge in time, but he still sneered arrogantly. And here I thought you were just some trash mage. Right then, the other guy in the group hurriedly piped up, please, just calm down. He's not using battle aura. He's still just a weak 12-year-old kid. The moment the guy finished his sentence, Lucius's eyes flashed with anger. His attack speed cranked up a notch. The bald guy smirked sinisterly, boasting to himself, right, I just need to keep my cool. Right after that, he reached back to touch the jar behind him. Lucius caught the move immediately. In an instant, the bald guy's body started to transform. He taunted at the top of his lungs, tremble in fear. After a few short minutes, the bald guy swelled to several times his original size, asking over and over, how about now, huh? Even so, Lucius charged in to attack without holding back for a second. However, the guy didn't take a scratch. Instead, he burst out laughing, mocking him. No sword swung by a mana-less brat could ever pierce this body. This is the raw power of all the mana we stolen. Suddenly, the bald guy crouched down and launched himself forward, shouting a quick warning. Catch this, kid. Lucius refused to be outdone. Sword in hand, he lunged straight for his opponent, and the two began trading intense blows. The bald guy threw a heavy punch straight at Lucius's face, but Lucius dodged it with ease. Still, Lucius sensed something off and thought to himself, this is bad. Right after that, he ducked low to the ground. In the blink of an eye, Lucius launched a counterattack, but the bald guy managed to dodge it. The guy's agility threw him deeper into thought. Not enough power. Still, both sides kept up the fierce, edge-of-your-seat clash. Out of nowhere, a thought of his past body flashed through Lucius's mind. Without battle aura, a body like this isn't much tougher than a sheet of paper. But if this body lacks battle aura, all of a sudden, the bald guy grabbed his sword in a vice grip. He put all his strength into hurling Lucius away. Unable to hide his rage, the bald guy roared at the top of his lungs. I've had enough. You're really pissing me off. Caught off guard, Lucius was sent flying right in front of Lilia. She and Noah gasped in absolute horror at the sight. Luckily, Lucius managed to turn things around midair. He landed smoothly on one knee on the ground. Right on his heels, the bald guy closed the distance, talking big. I'll admit, that swordsmanship surprised me. But his next words were pure trash talk. A kid still just a kid, though. Without battle aura, your sword skills are no more dangerous than a newborn flailing its arms around. Suddenly, an orb of pure mana rolled right to Lucius's feet. He instinctively placed a hand over the left side of his chest, thinking this feeling, the more he thought about it, the more certain he became. I knew it. It feels like the battle aura pathways from my past life are responding. He immediately reached out toward the pure mana, whispering under his breath, if I use this. Out of nowhere, the bald guy shouted aggressively, time to finish you off. Meanwhile, Lucius was still lost in his own thoughts. If I remember correctly, this is how you use it. Slowly, he closed both eyes, tightening his grip around the orb of pure mana. Before long, a surging wave of magic energy engulfed Lucius's entire body. It kept twisting and reshaping itself before finally flowing directly into his body. The whole process happened without causing him a single shred of pain. Inside his body, countless streams of magic energy gathered at a single point. Lucius calmly kept his eyes closed, soaking in the rare sensation. Suddenly, his heart gave a powerful thud. Lucius's eyes snapped open in utter shock. A sinister smile crept onto his face as his mind raced. It's finally awake. Lucius's body is rapidly growing stronger. The battle aura pathways in this body. Watching this unfold, the bald guy's face instantly went pale with fright. Even though Lucius's steps were still a bit shaky, he reminded himself, I forcefully opened the pathways using that mana orb, though. He gripped his sword tight, trying to steady his nerves. My battle aura will probably only hold out for a single strike. The bald guy across from him started to panic, breaking out in a cold sweat as he stammered. The sheer killer intent radiating off Lucius was practically suffocating him. What is this pressure? Suddenly, Lucius's voice broke the silence. I'll end this in one hit. Lucius quickly dropped into a battle stance, overflowing magic energy radiating from all around his body. By now, the bald guy was scared out of his mind. Meanwhile, Lucius let out a triumphant smirk, muttering, "That's my specialty." Watching from above, the black-haired male student was equally terrified. The bald guy screamed at the top of his lungs, "Don't let that attack hit you." The sword in Lucius's hand suddenly burst into light. In the blink of an eye, the bald guy scrambled to turn and run, pure panic written all over his face. Even so, Lucius delivered his strike without a second thought. Shortly after, his opponent collapsed into a thick cloud of dust. Lucius's body began to give out from complete exhaustion. He collapsed onto the ground, gasping heavily for air, a quick thought passing through his mind. As expected, one hit was my limit. The power I absorbed from the mana orb is already fading. Drops of sweat trickled down Lucius's exhausted face continuously. He couldn't help thinking to himself, at least the battle aura pathways themselves are open now. His grip on the sword tightened even further. It's still incomplete, and it looks like I can't channel battle aura without a mana orb. The faint smile on Lucius's lips revealed his underlying excitement. Quickly gathering his composure, he muttered, "But now I've found a path forward." Out of nowhere, Noah came running over from a distance, calling out Lucius's name in a pant. Lilia followed right behind her, speaking up with a hint of caution. She couldn't hide her anxiety as she asked, "What on earth was that just now?" As her words trailed off, a dead silence settled over the air. Noah whispered softly, "Are you okay?" Hearing that, Lucius reassured her, "I'm fine." Suddenly, Hector called out from afar, "Elminster!" Instantly, everyone present went silent. Only then did he slowly stand up, demanding in a stern voice, "The way you handle that sword, that's the skill of someone who spent decades practicing swordsmanship." As he kept talking, Horo grew even more intense about it. "Who taught you that?" Continuous gusts of wind blew past, making the atmosphere between the two grow even more tense. Neither side said a word for what felt like forever. Finally, Lucius shifted his gaze toward Hector, but he was in no rush to offer an explanation. Lilia stretched comfortably to loosen up. "Well, at least our ranks jumped up quite a bit." Noah replied flatly, "Yeah." She added with interest, "We've gathered everyone's aura now." Lilia flashed a confident smile. "I'm not losing to you anymore, Noah." She was currently holding rank 26, Lilia Magnate. Noah merely smiled faintly, not caring in the slightest. "I'll let you have the win for now." Rank 29, Noah Raven. Meanwhile, the guy at rank 25, Hector Gilbert, remained completely silent. He gritted his teeth, looking utterly pissed off. Hector's glare remained locked onto Lucius. He was deep in his own calculations. Rank 19, Lucius Elminster. His battle aura pathways were unlocked during this training session. But with my current amount of aura, I can't activate the battle aura pathways on my own. Next, I need to massively boost my aura reserves. They headed to the central grounds together. The students were looking up at the bulletin board, the 27th Royal Gambling Tournament. Seeing it, Lilia knit her brows tightly. "What is this?" Noah was pretty curious too. The Royal Gambling Tournament? All of a sudden, an arm reached out to block Lucius's path. Kathy acted friendly as she asked, "Interested?" "Hey kid, how's it going?" Her eyes carried a barely hidden look of mischief. "Don't look so terrifying. You guys did great in the training yesterday, didn't you?" "Thanks to you kids, I managed to get rid of those old geezers so easily." On high alert, he took a step back. "Is that all?" Kathy flew over to the bulletin board in a flash. "Did this catch your eye?" She pulled out a literal megaphone to start hyping it up. "This tournament is hosted by the Empire itself. Skilled fighters from all over the Empire will gather here, not just from the Academy. It's a massive event." A few level-headed students chimed in cautiously. "If I remember correctly, isn't this just a twisted pastime where powerful nobles bet money on fighters? People actually value their lives, you know? Aren't there rumors that someone dies every single time?" Kathy didn't care one bit and confirmed it on the spot. "Those rumors are pretty much true." Even so, she leaned in close to his face with a smile. Kathy highlighted the main point. The arena for this tournament has a special setup. The aura released by the fighters accumulates on the ring, and anyone inside the ring naturally absorbs that gathered aura. So, the longer the match goes on, the concentration of aura in the ring gets thicker and thicker. She shouted in excitement. The longer you stay in that ring, the higher your base aura will climb. Hearing that piqued Lucius's interest. Kathy kept bragging about the perks. Since this is an off-campus event and doesn't affect school rankings, it's a great tournament for anyone who wants to test their strength. But most of the students couldn't care less. If it doesn't affect our rankings, there's no reason to join. Besides, if my parents found out I participated in gambling, I don't even want to think about what they'd say. Let's go, she thought to herself with a bit of regret. This tournament really isn't popular, is it? He was still mulling it over. An arena where aura gathers? Lilia didn't seem to care either. Since it doesn't affect rankings, there's no need to enter. We could get hurt, too. A sharp gleam of interest flashed in Lucius's eyes. If I win every match, it means I can harvest a massive amount of aura. As the crowd walked away, he spoke up, "Hey, you." Hearing his voice, Kathy's eyes lit up instantly. Lucius asked casually, "Where do I sign up?" Her eyes widened in shock. "You're actually entering?" "It has nothing to do with rankings, you know." She zipped straight over to him, exclaiming, "If it's for Lucy-chan, I'll handle the registration for you." Kathy added some extra info. By the way, she lowered her voice to let him know that B-rank students, rank 10 and rank 15, all rank higher than Lucy-chan, were scheduled to compete too. Kathy happily shot off out of the main courtyard. "Do your best out there." Lucius let out a subtle, calculating smile. Time flew by, and opening day arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Royal Gambling Tournament. The rules here are dead simple. Place whatever amount you want on your favorite fighter. If your fighter takes the win, you walk away with a payout based on the odds. The MC shouted to pump up the crowd. The deeper a fighter goes in the tournament, the lower their payout odds drop. In other words, these early rounds when no one's paying attention, he intentionally tempted them. Betting now is your best shot at backing an underdog for a huge payout. Anyone who manages to pick out the future stars will dominate this tournament. The audience was buzzing with chatter. I heard there's a 12-year-old freshman competing as the Academy's representative. It's just vulgar entertainment for the nobility anyway, hardly worth betting on. Lucius stood backstage, taking in the scene. His thoughts drifted as he observed, just as expected from an Empire-sponsored tournament. Everyone here possesses an insane amount of aura. Lucius could clearly sense the unbelievable strength of every individual present. He narrowed his eyes for a closer look. Looks like the three ranked above rank 15 haven't shown up yet. The MC waved his hands in excitement as the match card spun around. Now, let's announce the matchup for our very first fight. Lucius's face popped up right after. The guy announced in a booming voice, "Whoa. The physical size difference between these two is massive." First match is between the representative of the Royal Academy, freshman Lucius Elminster. The MC raised his voice to introduce the opponents, versus the fighter from the Northern Guard, Galdus. Lilia picked up on it right away. "Aren't the Northern Guards one of the highest-ranking guard units in the Empire?" Noah chimed in with praise. "You sure are well-informed, magnate." She gave a forced reply. The noble smirked triumphantly. "This match is a freebie. We can make some easy money on a guaranteed win." A massive wave of bets poured heavily onto Lucius's opponent. "The match will begin shortly." The Northern Guards hollered in amusement. "Hey, how is this even gambling anymore? Don't be too hard on the kid. He's still young after all." "Poor thing," the MC announced at the top of his voice. "From now on, the aura from both fighters will be gathered in the twin pillars. Once they're fully charged, that will be the signal to start the match." He shouted with excitement. "Are both fighters ready?" Lucius remained dead calm, not even bothering to reply. The MC raised his gavel high, his voice echoing across the arena. "Ready." The MC struck the bell hard, ringing out the starting signal. Galdus lunged behind him like lightning. "Stupid brat." Lilia jumped up in shock. So fast. He let out a mighty roar. "What the hell is this?" Lucius tilted his head back slightly, muttering, "An axe." He easily caught the sharp incoming attack. Galdus's eyes widened in utter shock. Lucius casually blasted his opponent into the distant wall. The man instantly lost consciousness. He hadn't even broken a single drop of sweat. Lucius merely let out a subtle, faint smile. Galdus slammed face first into the floor, completely out of the fight. Every guest in attendance turned pale. The MC also knit his brows in disbelief. Unbelievable. He had to pull himself together before declaring, "The match is over. The winner is Lucius Elminster." The entire crowd erupted. What the hell? How could he lose to a kid like that? I put 100 million Ginny on him. The MC pointed straight at Lucius's unbothered face. An absolutely stunning result right from the first match. One blow, done with a single hit. A super rookie has emerged. The onlookers let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. I was worried over nothing. Stop shaking the railing, magnate. Most were burning with curiosity. Who on earth is he? He had absorbed a substantial amount of aura. Even so, Lucius was far from satisfied. Still not enough to trigger my battle aura pathways. The next match wrapped up just as quickly. Lucius Elminster versus Baron Giron. The MC seemed used to the pacing by now. Round 2 ends in another single-hit knockout. What kind of monster is this kid? The nobles scrambled to pivot. Damn it, we're wiped out. Hey, shift all the bets to that kid. Bet every single cent we have. Ignoring their acknowledgement, he kept plowing through to the next rounds. He held his head and cheered in wild hype. An astonishing 3-win streak. The 12-year-old underdog, Lucius Elminster, is unstoppable. Lucius kept a straight face as he absorbed the aura. Kathy was happily celebrating inside her massive pile of winnings. Lucy is the best. Someone tried to hush her quiet down. Hector was biting his lip so hard it drew blood out of pure envy. He focused on feeling the surge of power inside his body. Not yet. This is still not enough. Suddenly, heavy rumbles echoed from the grandstands. Lucius instinctively straightened up, taken aback. A dark figure slowly approached. His very first step onto the platform radiated an incredible pressure. The 2 aura pillars were filled in an instant. The MC broke out in a cold sweat. Whoa, nobody told me about this. I can't believe a super VIP actually showed up. He stood tall and imposing on the high platform. Anyone nearby instinctively backed away a few steps. Lucius froze in place, stunned. Each commanding step moved toward the center. His mood noticeably sank. Lucius clutched his fists so hard out of frustration. He could now clearly see the face of the man standing opposite him. Atlas swept a cold, piercing glare below. Lucius glared intently right back at him. Atlas. His hatred threatened to burn straight through the man. Too intense. Burning glances locked in a fierce standoff. The golden glint in Lucius's eyes made no attempt to hide his killing intent. The MC announced in a loud voice. An unexpected VIP guest has arrived. Almost none of the nobles dared to look him in the eye. Why would he come to a place like this? He raised his voice to introduce him. From the greatest swordsmanship family in the Empire. Lilia felt the immense weight clearly. What is this crushing pressure? The MC's voice echoed through the entire arena. It's Duke Atlas, head of the Arclight family. Lucius could barely contain his emotions, standing before his sworn enemy, Atlas. Atlas merely narrowed his eyes, looking down. So you're the cursed child of the Elminster family. A magic family is nothing more than a bunch of meaningless fools. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, but Atlas clearly picked up on the intense emotions surging from the boy. Not bad eyes. He didn't pay it much mind. It's hard to believe such intent to kill is coming from a child, though I have no idea why it's aimed at me. Atlas simply muttered under his breath. Interesting. Lucius gritted his teeth, forcing himself to endure it. He clutched his chest, as if wanting to tear it apart, his heart pounding relentlessly. Lucius tried his best to hold himself back, to make this man taste the ultimate agony. Now is not the time. The MC suddenly shouted in excitement. What? He broke the heavy tension. We just received some breaking news. The MC called out to grab the crowd's attention. The champion of this tournament, Atlas settled comfortably into his seat, will be granted the right to personally duel Duke Atlas. The news was truly earth-shattering. Lucius snapped his head up instantly. They said that even seeing him fight once in a lifetime was extraordinarily rare. Many nobles leaped to their feet. The strongest swordsmanship in the Empire, a chance to witness that moment. The MC snickered with glee. This gets me so pumped up. The entire crowd burst into cheers all at once. Lucius suddenly stood up straighter. He whispered softly to himself, "This is absolutely perfect." A fierce ambition surged within Lucius. Right here, in front of the entire empire. He flashed a wild, crazed smile. "I will dig your grave," the MC announced in a loud voice. "And now it's time for the Block A finals." Felix chuckled arrogantly. "I never thought a foolish kid like you could make it all the way to the finals." Lucius could already envision the sweet future ahead. Just a little more. "In just a moment, I will drive you to despair." His eyes were fixed entirely on Atlas's figure. The man radiated a surge of blue aura. "You dare look away while standing in front of me?" Felix arrogantly gathered an energy orb. "You must really have a death wish." He screamed, full of self-importance, as if he had already won. "Then granting your wish would be an act of mercy." The overwhelming wave of power surged forth, threatening to sweep through the entire arena. Lucius didn't even bother to dodge. He stood right there, letting the blast engulf him. Yet, Lucius didn't have a single scratch on him. Felix's jaw dropped in horror. "You blew away my super high-density magic." He coldly raised his arm, and Lucius unleashed 2 sharp slashes of aura. The pressure was far more terrifying than any strike before it. The nobles in the stands had to stumble back a few steps from the pressure surging out of the ring. A moment later, he could be seen clutching his head, trembling uncontrollably. Felix pathetically begged to forfeit. "I lose. I yield. So please don't kill me." Lilia couldn't believe her eyes. What on earth was that? Noah also broke out in a cold sweat. Lucius's aura is on a completely different level than before. I've never seen anything like it. Lucius coldly swept his gaze toward his target. The MC seemed used to his insane talent by now. "I never expected a 12-year-old boy to go this far." The aura was absorbed once again. He declared at the top of his lungs, "The biggest dark horse of this tournament. The winner of Block A is Lucius." His eyes brimmed with killing intent. Just one more match. Atlas was still watching the battle from high above. The organizers set up the next round quickly. Up next is the Block B Finals. A powerhouse fighter ranked 10th at the Royal Academy. Someone who is even a former champion of this tournament. He stepped out solemnly. Gladys Foran. Gladys's opponent had yet to show up. The mysterious rookie. The girl in the waiting room startled awake when she heard her name. Estelle. He called out a few more times. "Estelle, please enter the arena." The nobles mocked. Did he run away? Facing Gladys, that's pretty much expected. Estelle finally dragged her stuffed bunny out. "Is it my turn already?" He saw that tiny figure and knit his brows tightly. The audience buzzed endlessly. "Hey, are you going to be okay?" She casually let out a long, lazy yawn. Estelle clearly looked like she had just woken up. The MC felt a bit helpless as he asked, "Are you ready?" Down below, the girl gave a couple of nods. The 2 aura pillars were fully charged. "All right, let's get back to the Block B Finals." Estelle looked like she couldn't care less about the match. Gladys made up his mind. "Sorry, little girl. I won't hold back just because you're younger than me." The MC shouted the signal. "Begin the match." He confidently summoned magic circles. "At the very least, I'll end this instantly, so you won't suffer." They quickly surrounded Estelle. Waves of energy began to spread, but she didn't react in the slightest. It seemed as though victory was already in Gladys's hands. Suddenly, Estelle slightly opened her purple eyes. The entire attack he was about to unleash crumbled to dust in a split second. The whole grandstand fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The MC stood there clueless, dumbfounded. The nobles' faces turned pale too. Not even Gladys's body remained intact. Meanwhile, Estelle was still yawning away. The little girl lowered her eyes slightly as if bored out of her mind. Only after a long pause did the MC regain his senses to conclude, "Gladys is unable to continue." Nothing was left on the ring except a bright red pool of blood. The MC declared in a loud voice, "Therefore, the winner is Estelle." The audience was left stunned. What was that just now? Gladys was obliterated in an instant. Atlas rested his chin on his hand, casually listening. With Estelle advancing from Block B, she hugged her stuffed bunny back to her chest. The final match was set. Lucius proactively stepped onto the stage. The final match will be a face-to-face duel between 2 fighters. Get ready, folks. The finals will be Estelle going head-to-head against Lucius Elminster. Valeria seemed quite intrigued by this matchup. Out of nowhere, a voice broke out, making him grimace. Estelle jit-read. I've been watching her matches from the very beginning. Kathy leaned way over to get a better view, though I still can't wrap my head around the mechanics behind her magic. So that's the face you're pulling, huh? Annoyed, Valerius muttered. Is she still here? She cheerfully added. She's the one who grabbed the 4th spot on the rankings. Even if she rarely comes to the academy, she won't give away her abilities that easily. Kathy's eyes suddenly went sharp. There's just one thing bugging me, though. The booming announcement rocked the whole venue. And now, the final match of the Royal Arena tournament begins. Estelle was still yawning her heart out. A barely visible spark flickered in her purple eyes. I'm so exhausted from all these back-to-back fights. On high alert, Lucius dropped into a battle stance. Channeling her power into a small plush bunny, she muttered, let's wrap this up real quick. Wrapping her arm around Lilia's neck while watching intently, Kathy noted, just as I thought. Estelle alone is sensing the aura signature from both of you. She can see it clear as day. Kathy pieced it together with a hunch. Could her magic actually be? The stuffed bunny lowered its center of gravity. It launched forward with unimaginable force. The bunny shot straight for Lucius with pinpoint accuracy. Leaning aside, he dodged it effortlessly fast. It unleashed a nonstop assault. Lucius smoothly slipped past the bunny's attacks time after time. Carefully maneuvering around, he analyzed the situation seriously. This power, and this accuracy too, Lucius concluded with absolute certainty. This isn't just simple magic manipulation. He took a close look at the aura radiating from both Estelle and the plush toy. This is likely advanced magic that copies the caster's own aura signature onto objects, controlling them all at the same time. Building on that realization, Lucius devised a countermeasure. In that case, bypassing the plush bunny entirely, he charged straight at Estelle. I'll take down the real body as fast as possible. She looked completely unfazed. The bunny lunged over to cut Lucius off. He easily tackled it to the ground. Lucius delivered a heavy kick, blasting the blocking bunny out of his way. The corner of Estelle's mouth curled up slightly. She was now well within his strike range. Lucius put everything into bringing his attack straight down. Out of nowhere, a second stuffed bunny popped up. His focus was thrown off. A massive crater formed right in the middle of the arena floor. The onlookers turned pale at the sight. The MC held his breath in anticipation. Unbelievable. A second bunny has appeared. It looks like Lucius's reaction was a step too late. A sudden movement broke through the cloud of dust. He landed lightly on a section of intact ground. The MC declared in delight. He's still alive. He survived with barely a scratch. Though it seemed the MC missed the massive bruise on Lucius's right arm. The entire grandstand erupted in wild cheers. Estelle finally bothered to get up. You're pretty good, aren't you? She flashed an intrigued smile. Just for you. I'll show you all of them at once. Hearing that, Lucius knew bad news was incoming. The aura surrounding Estelle rapidly grew denser. A plush teddy bear emerged from the ground. He couldn't help but gasp in shock. They pulled up onto the arena floor one after another. The MC broke out in a cold sweat instinctively. What on earth is this? This is an absolute nightmare. From start to finish, Atlas kept a totally stoic expression. The MC cried out in horror. There are 6 of those terrifying bunnies. Estelle chimed in happily. All right, everyone. She offered a gentle smile. Go play with him. Lucius was practically overwhelmed by the sheer size of this fighting force. He regained his cool to handle the situation. Lucius deftly dodged the slashes and stabs from the plush horde. He timed his aura bursts perfectly to parry their blows. Lucius was still holding his ground remarkably well. The hyper-aggressive plushies targeted his weak spots relentlessly. Carelessly taking a blow, Lucius suffered damage, thinking, at this rate, I won't hold out much longer. 2 plushies closed in on him simultaneously. Lucius unleashed his aura to blast them back. Both of them were instantly paralyzed. Suddenly, realization struck him. These things don't even have eyes. Lucius arrived at a conclusion, which means they're likely homing in on aura signatures. Thinking fast, a plan took shape in his mind. Then, Lucius spun around, snatching something midair. He clenched his fist tight with a mysterious look. Alice caught onto that subtle move. The entire horde of plushies charged toward Lucius at once. Noah shrieked in panic. He's completely surrounded. Estelle licked her lips playfully. It's over. He suddenly lowered his stance. Lucius smirked, tightening his grip on his fist. He launched a surging pillar of aura straight up. The cracked ground continuously radiated a bright blue light. The plush horde was instantly drawn to it, shifting their targets all at once. BMC blurted out in shock. What just happened? He looked visibly thrilled. The bunnies were suddenly drawn toward that intense light bursting into the sky. They're being pulled right toward it. Lucius couldn't help but crack a smile. Gotcha. The plush horde was busy tearing apart the bait he had thrown out. Lucius gathered his strength and struck straight at them. All 6 of them were blown to pieces at the same time. He let out a faint, satisfied smile. Lucius landed lightly back on the ground. He stood face to face with Estelle, who was now totally weaponless. The crowd let out another collective gasp of excitement. Kathy covered her mouth in shock. No way. Her sharp eyes picked up on it immediately. Did he actually mimic and copy Estelle's aura signature in that split second? Kathy clearly saw 2 distinct aura flows, one from Lucius and one from the small pebble in his hand. Lucius still wasn't entirely satisfied. It's still nowhere near a genuine copy like hers. But he didn't dwell on it too much. Whatever. I managed to clear out those bunnies anyway. Lucius stood tall with confidence. The match is over. Estelle still looked as cool as a cucumber. Suddenly, she burst out laughing. He sensed a surging, massive aura. Terrifying power radiated all around Estelle. Growing exponentially stronger than before, she boasted, "It's been a long time since anyone made me get serious." But do you understand what this means? The shadowy silhouettes gradually merged back into Estelle. All the aura from those bunnies is channeling right back into me. Hearing that, Lucius's face paled. The onlookers gasped in utter shock. BMC knit his brows tightly, screaming out, "What is that? What on earth is that?" A gigantic, plush bunny, centered right on her, manifested in the arena. Tense to the bone, he broke out in a cold sweat.